Atheists seek out God believers and use vote bots to downrate our videos. Please support believers by thumbing us up. Thank you and God bless you.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brett Keene from God TV Radio. Make sure you check out my gaming channel, Games You Love. And when you get an opportunity, check out my websites having to do with exposing atheism. All links can be found in the description. And if you'd like to have live discussions with me on my show, just simply subscribe to Brett Keene Superstar and God TV Radio International. And you can come in and chat with us. Links are always made public. And one other thing before we get into this video, if you feel like supporting me and helping me out just a little bit, feel free to go to my Patreon account or my PayPal and give some support if you can, if you want to. There's no obligation. Well, let's take a look at what we got here. As many of you know, on the video I did on the Amazing Atheist, exposing him, showing in a live broadcast him talking to his best friend, Fake Sagan, he admitted to actually having sex with a 14-year-old. In the video, it clearly shows that he stated that I guess he thought it was cute whenever he said this, but he said he bonded with this 14-year-old's vagina, but he used the word pussy. Let's take a look at some of this. I noticed that the video got a lot of downvotes, a lot of dislikes. Apparently the atheists out there, one, they either don't like to be exposed for their criminal actions, or number two, they love the Amazing Atheist so much that they don't even care if he lies down with children and has sex with them, as long as they get their entertainment from him getting drunk on his videos, The Drunken Peasants Show. Okay, so be it. And apparently they don't mind him bashing women or scamming them for over $100,000 with 4 different websites: Atheist Scum United, TheAmazingAtheist.com, Freedom of Speech Vids, Not Productive. Apparently atheists don't mind getting ripped off either. And one thing I noticed that was really bothersome, besides him disliking the video, leaving comments actually justifying pedophilia. Let's take a look. This guy comes along called Jurek Mika, I think is how his name's pronounced. I can't exactly be sure. Atheists have weird names. He comes along, he says there's nothing wrong with having consensual sex with underage girls. Apparently, if your 5-year-old says, yes, I'm up to it, this feller thinks it's okay to have sex with your kid. And I wrote, is that so? He goes, yeah, bruh. Look, I'm not defending the Amazing Atheist. I despise that guy. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with having sex with underage girls as long as it's consensual. So if your 5-year-old is up for it and gives a thumbs up and says yes, then apparently atheists think it's okay. Let's take a look. I said, are you an atheist? He says, nah, I'm a Buddhist. I wrote, Buddhists don't believe in God. He says, some do, some don't. There are a lot of Buddhists that believe in a God. And I wrote, do you believe in God? And he wrote, nah, I haven't seen any compelling evidence yet. Well, you may not have gotten compelling evidence for God, but we sure have compelling evidence of atheists who like little kids and like to touch them. You know what amazes me, ladies and gentlemen? A couple of years ago, the Amazing Atheist, as well as many, many atheist YouTubers out there, actually made videos based upon a YouTuber out there called Dendrophilian, whom I have a video up on my website, Atheist Exposed, who promoted the idea that there was nothing wrong with child molestation. He stated that he thinks that everybody should have sex with kids. The video's up there for everybody to see, and you will be shocked. I plan on doing tons of videos on the comments, and you were going to be shocked at all the popular atheists out there who thought it was okay. Don't even bother going over to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, and deleting your comments or removing them. I've already recorded it, screenshotted everything. There's no getting out of this. So what he did was he sat there and said that pedophilia was fine, and he doesn't understand why people have a problem with it, especially if the children are up for it. And just literally tons of atheists out there posted videos supporting that. So I guess it's not really a shocker when you see atheists attacking feminists and having this great deal of hatred towards women out there, sitting there being rape apologists like Thunderfoot, the amazing atheist, over and over and over, guys like this doing it. It's amazing. And there was also a user out there called Coughlin who actually was selling rape t-shirts. There's atheists out there who sell t-shirts that promote and endorse the concept of rape. No kind of accountability. Nobody holding them responsible. And I don't understand why it is that these people are not locked in a 4x4 jail cell. I just don't get it. It's disgusting. So the next time you hear one of these little punk-ass atheists sitting there uploading a video talking about a Catholic priest whom I don't support or endorse or promote, I hate Catholic priests who have sex with kids just as much as a nasty-ass layman YouTuber atheist. The next time you see them doing that, remind them that they have a pedophile ring among them. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen. You've been listening to Brett Keane from God TV Radio.
My name is Dawn Keane. Please check out our new channel, God TV Radio International Network. Also, check out our gaming channel, Games You Love. You can follow us on Google+, Twitter, and Facebook. Links are in the description. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and rate. Have a good day.
All right. Well, it is an honor to be here at the Compass Conference once again. How many have been to one of my previous sessions before or seen one of my videotapes? Okay, how many never have? And how many do not understand the question so far? All right, well, good. Well, as he said, my name's Ken Hovind. I taught high school science for 15 years. Brother Bill, I don't understand this apologetics stuff, okay? I don't apologize at all. I believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate, and I think the evolution theory that's being taught in our schools is one of the dumbest and most dangerous religions on planet Earth. Okay. So, with that said, let's get started. This is not my wife. That's just a picture of her. Last summer was our 31st anniversary, and we sat down and figured out how much money we've spent since we got married. We have spent all of it. And praise God, she's with me here out at the table this week. You get to see my wife. She doesn't get to travel much. She's real involved in music at our church, and so you stop in and see her. We live in Pensacola, Florida. Been there for 16 years, and we have 3 kids, one of each. And I got all my kids married off, and the dog died, so I made it. I'm home free. It's wonderful. And we got 3.5 grandkids. And for those who don't know, grandkids are God's reward for not killing your own kids when you thought about it. Hang in there. It'll be worth it all. Amen. All right. And all 3 of my kids and their spouses work in our ministry and all live right around us. God's given us an amazing staff. We got Creation Science Evangelism and Dinosaur Adventure Land. We have an awesome time down there. A museum, theme park, and science center based on creation instead of evolution. I wish there were thousands of those across the country. So at Bill's request, we're covering today more reasons why evolution is stupid. Now, let me define some terms and some positions. I believe the Bible teaches very clearly, and I believe the scientific evidence points very clearly to this earth being instantly created in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago, and a great big flood about 4,400 years ago that completely destroyed the world and dropped everybody's property value to 0. And then Jesus came 2,000 years ago, and so that's the top timeline, and that's the position I take, and I believe that's true and defensible scientifically. The evolution theory says 20 billion years ago there was a big bang where nothing exploded and made everything. And then 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down and developed a hard rocky crust, and it rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup, and the soup came alive about 3 billion years ago. And that first life form found somebody to marry. That's a good trick, of course, and something to eat, and slowly evolved into everything we see today. I think the evolution theory is not defensible scientifically. Let's define some more terms here. Stupid. Lacking normal intelligence. Foolish. Silly. A stupid idea. Now, I was taught by my mommy, don't use the word stupid, okay? So when Bill said, preach on why evolution is stupid, I said, that's going to be easy to do, but it's going to be hard because it's been entrained in me since I was a little bitty. You know, you don't use that word. So I don't want to belittle anybody who believes in evolution here today, and I'm sure there are quite a few, that's fine. It's just not a common sense idea. It doesn't make sense. The things about evolution just simply are lacking normal intelligence. And we want to fix that today. Now, I collect science books. I taught science 15 years. I happen to love the subject. Richard Dawkins said, it's absolutely safe to say if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked. Folks, there is a battle going on, okay? Whether you realize it or not, whether you understand it or not, there's a war going on in our culture. And there are two basic sides. One side says, God made this world. He owns it. He makes the rules. The other side said, nobody makes this world. There are no rules. And it's a real war going on, and I'm right smack in the middle of it and helping to stir it up occasionally. Okay, so let's define some more terms here. The word evolution has at least 6 different meanings. First, we'd have to have cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter, the Big Bang, okay? Secondly, we'd have to have chemical evolution. That's where all of the elements evolve from hydrogen. I think that's silly. We'll talk about that in a minute. Thirdly, there'd have to be stellar evolution. The stars would have to evolve. Cosmic evolution, chemical evolution, and stellar evolution. There's a lot of stars out there. The last estimate, in 2003, the most recent estimate is there are enough stars out there right now that we know about that everybody on planet Earth can own 11 trillion of them to yourself. Those are the ones we know about. We don't know about the ones that we don't know about. Fourthly, there's going to have to be organic evolution. Somewhere, somehow, life has to get started from non-living material. Okay? Fifthly, there'd have to be macroevolution, where an animal changes into a different kind of animal. And lastly, microevolution. I object to the term, but they use it, so I believe in number 6. That happens. I think variations happen within the kinds, but the first 5 are purely religious. I think, quite frankly, they're stupid. Okay? Let's cover them here. Look at each of the first 5. Textbook says, 18 to 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. That's stupid. And then there was a big bang where this little tiny dot exploded. That's stupid, okay? They don't tell you where the time came from, where the space came from, where the matter came from, where the energy came from. They just assume all of that is inherent in this little bitty dot, which came from nothing. Who's ever seen a big bang create order? Big bangs don't create order. That's stupid. Big bangs create big messes. The Humanist Manifesto says humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Well, the second law of thermodynamics tells us everything is falling apart. If you leave something alone for a while, it's going to rot, rust, die, break down, or fall apart. Nothing gets better by itself. So to say that the universe is self-existing is stupid, okay? It violates the second law of thermodynamics. Evolutionists say, well, yeah, you can add energy, though, and overcome the second law. And they say the Earth is an open system. It receives energy from the sun. I understand. But the universe is a closed system, by definition. Secondly, adding energy is destructive. There has to be something to utilize the energy. Adding energy is going to make it worse, okay? The Japanese added all kinds of energy to Pearl Harbor one day. They didn't organize nothing for us. A couple of years later, we returned the favor and added energy to a few of their cities, didn't we? Yeah. Adding energy is destructive. So the sun's energy is going to destroy the roof on your house. It'll destroy your entire house. The sun's energy will destroy the roof on your car. It'll destroy the paint job on your car. Adding energy is not the solution. You have to have intelligently directed and harnessed energy. So to say that you can overcome the second law by adding energy is stupid. It's just not that simple. Evolutionists assume that if you give enough time, things get better. That's silly, okay? You give things time, they get worse. Here's Sue at 20. Here she is at 90, okay? They don't get better. Textbook says nothing really means nothing. That's stupid. Not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. However, physicists theorize that from the state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion. Yes, boys and girls, you see, one day, nothing exploded. And here we are. There's no kind way to say it, okay? That's stupid. That's lacking normal intelligence, all right? Here's Discover magazine a couple years ago. Where did everything come from? Boys and girls, the universe burst into something from absolutely nothing. Zero, nada. As it got bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. That's real stupid. Yeah. The observable universe could have evolved from an infinitesimal region, this guy said. It's then tempting to go one step further and speculate that the entire universe evolved from literally nothing. We all came from a dot. That's stupid. I'm sorry, it just is, okay? So the Bible says, in the beginning, which is a reference to time, which, by the way, has three dimensions, past, present, future, a trinity, and you can't escape time. God created the heaven, that's space, which has three dimensions, length, width, height. You can't escape space. Where can you be where you're not in space or in time? You can't escape them. It permeates everything. And God created the earth. You know, matter comes in three dimensions, solid, liquid, gas. We have a trinity of trinities in 10 words. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Time, space, matter. All three have to come into existence at the same instant. If you had matter but had no space, where would you put it? If you had matter but had no time, when would you put it? You have to have all three simultaneously. People say, what did God do for millions of years before the creation? Well, your question assumes that God is stuck in time, space, matter. We are the ones stuck in time, space, matter. He's not stuck in those. See, if God was limited by time, He's not God. This is not 2004 in heaven. There is no time in heaven. And before the creation, there was no time. So once upon a time, there was a time when there was no time. Think about that one. Anyway. So when the textbook says nothing really means nothing, that's stupid, okay? It's just not common sense. None of these things can create themselves. Time, space, and matter cannot create themselves. They have to have an outside force, like an all-wise, all-powerful, almighty, infinite God to create those things. Then the textbook says this little tiny dot was spinning. It spun faster and faster. Yes, boys and girls, and one day it exploded. Big bang. Well, if you take a merry-go-round and put some kids on there, get the merry-go-round going clockwise as fast as it'll go, the kids go through distinct phases. In phase one, they're screaming at the football players. Come on, let's go, faster, faster. You get up around, 30 miles an hour. They go to phase two, where they stop screaming. Then you get going faster, and you get around 60 miles an hour, they start screaming again. But now they're screaming, stop, stop, please, slow down. When you get up around 100 miles an hour, you enter phase four, where the kids begin to fly off the merry-go-round. Now, when the kid flies off, you notice something interesting. As the kid is flying off the merry-go-round, if the merry-go-round is going clockwise, the kid, even after he leaves, is spinning clockwise until he encounters resistance, like a tree or telephone pole. That's because of a law known as the conservation of angular momentum. A spinning object that breaks apart will send all the fragments off spinning in the same direction. People say, well, what if they collide? They can't collide. The longer you wait, the further apart they get. It's like spokes on a wheel. They're getting farther apart. If a hand grenade explodes, can the fragments ever hit each other out in the field someplace? No, it doesn't happen, okay? Conservation of angular momentum says spinning objects break apart and the fragments fly the same direction, spin the same direction. So when they tell you that it all came from a spinning dot, it's silly. It violates common sense laws. 2 planets, Venus and Uranus, are spinning backwards. 8 of the 91 known moons are spinning backwards. 3 planets have moons going both directions at the same time. Some whole galaxies are spinning backwards. CNN, goofy galaxy spins wrong direction. The Big Bang Theory is stupid, okay? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So when they tell you it spun faster and faster and one day it exploded, that's simply stupid, okay? That's not the way it happened. So we have cosmic evolution, which I think is silly. Then we have, the textbook says, as the earth formed, the surface was hot and there were large pools of bubbling lava. Was the earth ever a hot molten mass like the textbook says? The Bible says the Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters. The Bible says God created it cold, not hot. See, everything about the evolution theory is backwards to the Bible. Don't try to compromise those two, okay? It's like trying to ride 2 horses going different directions, same time, okay? Robert Gentry's got a great book on the radio polonium halos. Gentry's a brilliant man. I think he's spoken at the conference, hasn't he? I've spoken with him at a couple conferences. I don't know if it was stealing the mind or not, but brilliant man, lives near Knoxville, Tennessee. He's done lots of study on the granites around the world. The granites all contain these radiopolonium halos, which have an extremely short half-life, proving they were never a hot molten mass. But these radiopolonium halos tell us absolutely positively the Earth was never a hot molten mass. And if you melt granite and let it cool back down, it doesn't form into granite again. Nobody knows for sure how granite was made. So when the textbook says the Earth was a hot molten mass, I'm sorry, that's stupid. It's not true. It's lacking normal intelligence. It didn't happen that way. Secondly, we'd have to have chemical evolution. All the elements forming from hydrogen, They think it all came from a big bang. Atoms of hydrogen in the proto-sun were fused together to form helium. Okay, I'll agree that can happen. But it's stupid to think that's going to form all the elements. They say, well, yeah, you can fuse and get, hydrogen fuses to helium. I agree. And you can't fuse past iron, though. It won't go past iron. How do you telling me you got uranium from hydrogen? I'd like to see that, please. It's lacking normal intelligence. It just doesn't happen. Chemically, it's not possible. Thirdly, there'd have to be what's called stellar evolution. The stars would have to evolve. The Bible says God made the stars. Plain and simple, that's just what it says. Textbook says 18 to 20 billion years ago was the Big Bang, which caused the formation of galaxies. Well, we got a real serious problem here. Big Bang theory says nothing got together and exploded while it was spinning and formed all these galaxies. Well, problems are multitude for this theory, okay? Some think the Big Bang theory made nice, neat, orderly galaxies. That's stupid, okay? These galaxies are really incredibly designed. Even at the galaxy level, there's design in the universe, all the way down to the molecular level. We see a star blow up about every 30 years. A star explodes. It's called a nova or a supernova. If the universe is billions of years old, why are there less than 300 supernova rings ever discovered? That's only a few thousand years worth. I mean, if a star is blowing up every 30 years, there ought to be millions of these supernova rings if the universe were millions of years old. Don't tell me it's millions of years old. I don't believe you. That's just not common sense. They say, well, yeah, new stars are forming. They say, this textbook says, new stars are constantly being born in clouds of gas and dust. First of all, that's not ever observed, okay? The silent embarrassment of modern astrophysics is we do not know how even a single one of these stars managed to form. You can't get dust and squeeze it together and make a star. There are common sense laws that overcome that, like Boyle's gas law. You try to squeeze the gas together, the pressure builds up and it drives it back apart. Nobody ever sees gases form into solids by their own internal gravitational force. So if stars evolve, star births should at least equal star deaths. And we're seeing one die every 30 years, and we're never seeing one form. One guy said, oh, we're seeing a star form right now in Crab Nebula. I said, no, you're not. He said, yeah, we are. I said, no, you're seeing a spot getting brighter. You see a spot, and it's getting brighter, and you're assuming a star is forming. Well, duh, it could be a dust cloud is clearing in front of it. It could be another Big Bang going off, a supernova going off out there. All you're seeing is a spot getting brighter. You're assuming it's making a new star. Nobody's ever seen a new star form. Some people think if we lose stars every 30 years and never replace them, this will eventually lead to having 70 sextillion stars. Yeah, you keep spending money, pretty soon you'll be rich. That's stupid, okay? It just is stupid, okay? Some of these planets are cooling off. They're constantly losing their heat, okay? And the textbooks is telling us they're millions of years old, billions of years old. You can't just keep cooling off and cooling off. Pretty soon it's cooled off. I mean, if you walked into a room and found a cup of coffee sitting on the table and I said, don't touch the coffee, that's hot. And you said, well, whose is it? I said, I don't know. It's been sitting there for 400 years. That's stupid, okay? Jupiter has a moon called Ganymede, which has a very strong magnetic field. Scientists are kind of perplexed by this because the magnetic field indicates a hot molten core, and yet Ganymede should have cooled off billions of years ago. Why does Ganymede still have a hot molten core and a strong magnetic field? To say it's billions of years old is stupid. It's just lacking common intelligence. Saturn has rings around it, but the rings are constantly expanding. They're moving away from the planet. To say they're billions of years old is stupid. They can't be billions of years old. They would have been dissipated by now. They're not billions of years old. The moon is going farther away from the Earth every year. We're slowly losing the moon. Now, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. As the moon goes around the Earth, it's gradually getting farther away. It's spiraling out about 3 inches a year. So that means that it used to be closer. Well, if you bring the moon in closer, you start to create a problem, you see, because the moon causes the tides. Now, you folks here in Denver probably don't worry about the tides. But in Pensacola, you worry about the tides, okay? Well, if you brought the moon in closer, you'd create a serious problem because there's a law called the inverse square law. If you bring the moon into 1/3 the distance, you take the 1/3, inverse it, square it, it's 9 times the gravitational pull. If you run all the math on this, you'll find 1.2 billion years ago, the moon was whizzing around just above the surface of the Earth. That explains what happened to the tall dinosaurs. They got moon. So, to teach us the moon is billions of years old while it's constantly moving away and nobody knows of any factors that would reverse that situation, that's just stupid, okay? It can't be true. Organic evolution is the fourth stage. That's where life gets started from non-living material. The Bible says God created the living creatures. And there are folks who simply don't want God telling them what to do, bottom line. God, leave me alone, stay out of my life. Okay. So they got to figure out a way how life got here without involving a supernatural intelligence creating it. The Bible says God created it. This textbook says the history of life on earth began approximately 3.5 billion years ago. How this occurred and has been and will continue to be a topic for inquiry. Let me give you the Hovind translation. It's okay to inquire how life evolved. It is not okay to inquire whether it evolved. That's stupid. Is this education or indoctrination? Hey kids, we know life evolved. Now you got to try to figure out how it happened. How about if we even question, did it evolve? Oh no, you can't question that. You cannot question that. We know it evolved. Now just figure out how it happened. That's not education. That's indoctrination. Urey and Miller in the 1950s wanted to know how the Earth and solar system had come to be. At the bottom it says, he never proved how life originated. He did add evidence to the theory that life could have started by itself. Life started by itself. That's stupid, okay? Life cannot start by itself. This textbook says, swirling in the waters of the oceans is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Progress from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. That's stupid. Can you believe they cut down a tree to print that book? Where's Al Gore when you need him? Yeah. Here we have 4 major magazines and news media, Scientific American, CNN, New Scientist. They're all saying life sprang from clay. Yes, a piece of clay created life. Well, that's stupid. And I think God could take clay and create life, okay? But the clay can't create life from itself. Major difference here, okay? Textbook says, students are taught that life evolved from non-living materials, like this one. Many important events occurred during the Archean era, the most important of which was the evolution of life. Progress from complex molecules to even the simplest living organism was a very long process. Yes, boys and girls, you see, long ago and far away. They hide it in antiquity. Well, if you just imagine, you go back far enough, it happened. Oh, yeah, it must have. This one says, between 4 and 3.8 billion years ago, living cells emerged. There's no record of the event. That's stupid, okay? The first self-replicating systems must have emerged in this organic soup. Yep, we all came from soup. Now that's stupid. I'm sorry, it just lacks common sense. Ernst Haeckel said, he knew that spontaneous generation must be true, not because it had been proven in the laboratory, but because otherwise it would be necessary to believe in a creator. Ah, now we're getting to the truth. Well, I'm sorry, Ernst. That's a stupid way to look at life, okay? Have scientists really produced life in the laboratory? Well, they want you to think they have. What they did, they took a series of glass tubes and beakers and flasks and hooked them all together and made 4 gases go through there: methane, ammonia, water vapor, and hydrogen. Notice, there's no oxygen. They didn't want oxygen in there. They excluded oxygen. They said, well, maybe the early Earth had what's called a reducing atmosphere, no oxygen present. Well, and then they said, at the bottom of the flask, it collected stuff that was rich in amino acids. That's stupid. It was not rich in amino acids by a long shot. What they did, they took 4 gases, excluding oxygen. Major problem, because they had to leave oxygen out, because if anything tried to get together, it would oxidize. You know, you cut a banana open, lay it on the table, it turns brown, it oxidizes. You don't paint your car, it rusts, it oxidizes. So he took oxygen out. The problem is, you got to have oxygen. See, ozone is made from oxygen. And ozone blocks UV light. So if you take away the oxygen, now the UV light destroys your ammonia. And that's one of the other gases you're trying to use. So you cannot get life to evolve without oxygen. And you cannot get life to evolve with oxygen. And the Earth has always had oxygen. All the experiments are showing that there's no proof of this reducing atmosphere. There's far more oxygen in the past than anybody ever imagined. We find in general no evidence that the Earth had an oxygen-free atmosphere. That's what all the scientific experiments have shown. So life cannot evolve with oxygen. Life cannot evolve without oxygen. And yet they're teaching us life evolved from non-living matter. I'm sorry, that's just stupid. It had to be designed, created by a really smart designer. This textbook says there was 0% oxygen on the earth, but the rocks absorbed it. That's stupid. They filtered out the product in this experiment. Miller and Urey in their experiments had the stuff going through this series of tubes, and when it got to the bottom, they drained it off because they didn't want it to go through the electric spark chamber again because the spark would tear it apart. They said it's like 100,000 times more likely to destroy it than it was to create it. So they had to protect the goo that they created at the bottom. That's not realistic for nature. I mean, if they're saying life evolved in some warm little pond from lightning strikes, that's just not common sense. Because the lightning strike's 100,000 times more likely to tear it apart than it is to put it together. Go check out your little pond after lightning strikes. See how many frogs are surviving. Yeah. What he actually made was 85% tar, 13% carboxylic acid. Now, both of those are toxic to life. He made 2% amino acids, and only 2 of the amino acids were made. There are 20 different amino acids. It's like making 2 letters of the alphabet accidentally by dropping toothpicks and saying, wow, look at this. Nobody writes books. Here's how they're formed. Duh. These amino acids bond with tar and acid much more quickly than with each other. Amino acids are like letters of the alphabet. They're building blocks to make words, and you got to have words to make paragraphs and paragraphs to make books. What he actually made in the experiment was the equivalent of a couple of letters. 2 of the letters. And half of them were backwards. Now you really got a problem. Because the smallest proteins have 70 to 100 of these amino acids in precise order, and they're all left-handed. What's the chances of dropping toothpicks out of an airplane and creating letters on the ground, 70 letters in a row, all facing the right way, all spelled correctly, just to make one paragraph? The chances are 0. It's not going to happen. Now, if you believe it will, that's great. I admire your faith, but don't call it science. And don't make me pay to put that in the schools like it's part of science. Okay, you go start yourself a private school and teach that junk to anybody that wants to pay and come learn it. This is America, the land of the free and the home of the slave, or whatever. So, now DNA and RNA are all right-handed molecules, and hundreds of these have to combine in the right order, and they unbond in water much faster than they bond. And as far as I'm concerned, folks, the oceans are completely full of water. Brownian motion is going to drive them apart. It is not common sense to say scientists have made life in the laboratory. It's just stupid. They haven't even come close. I was in a debate one time, and this one student in the Q&A time said, Hovind, what are you going to say if scientists ever make life in the laboratory? What are you going to say then? I said, well, first of all, I would like to point out they're a long ways from it. They're nowhere close to creating life. They can't even get just a couple of these amino acids to combine. Can't even make a protein. He said, well, you're right. I said, now, to answer your question, I guess I'd have to say, if a bunch of intelligent scientists get together and create life in the laboratory, that would prove it takes intelligence to make life. Which is what I've been saying all along. Life came from rocks. That's just stupid. It's not common sense, okay? Macroevolution tells us it can change from one kind of animal into another. Textbook says, yes, boys and girls, bacteria slowly evolved to humans. This one says, all the animals have a common ancestor, early reptile. That's just stupid, okay? Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog, all right? Even Mary Leakey said those trees of life with their branches of our ancestors is a lot of nonsense. Stephen Gould at Harvard University said, the evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks are not the evidence of fossils. We don't have any proof of these trees at all. They make it up. They say the mammals and the birds and the crocodiles have a common ancestor. Everything inside that circle is just pure religious speculation. They're guessing. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. You may get a big dog or a little dog, but you get a dog every time. This Irish textbook calls it divergent evolution. Oh, come on, look at it. You got 5 dogs coming from a wolf. Don't give it a fancy name. It's still a dog, okay? That's not evolution. That's stupid to say that's evolution. It's a variety of dog. This Mexican textbook says the horse and the zebra have a common ancestor. I agree. And it looked like a horse. 4-wheel drive, genuine leather upholstery. I mean, all the standard equipment, okay? There's a lot of kinds of cows in the world, probably 15 different major varieties of cows, and they might have had a common ancestor. A cow. There's a magazine where you can order chickens. Okay, boys and girls, let's order some chickens. Do you want to get cinnamon queens, red rocks, white rocks, cherry eggers, brown leghorns, golden comets? But then the magazine says, jungle fowl are the original bird from which all varieties and strains of domesticated chickens are derived. Did you know all the chickens had a common ancestor? It was a chicken. Some say, well, that's evolution. No, I'm sorry, that's stupid, okay? It's a variety of chicken, right? There are 8 kinds of bears in the world, and they might have had a common ancestor, a bear. So to take these observations we see, like dogs and wolves having a common ancestor, and saying that is a conclusion that we all have a common ancestor, I'm sorry, that's just stupid. It lacks common intelligence, right? Textbook says the horse evolved from a 4-toed horse. What they don't tell you about this is the first one had 18 pairs of ribs. It's a meat-eating animal still alive today in East Africa and Turkey, okay? It's about smaller than a fox. It's not a horse. It's not even related, okay? The next one had 15 pairs of ribs. The next one has 19. They just picked these animals and arranged them in order, okay? The horse evolution series is stupid. It's never observed today. There's a huge variety of horses today. We got big horses and little horses right now. And the horse evolution series was proven wrong in 1950. Even G.G. Simpson, who believed very strongly in evolution, says, look, folks, it's not true. It's wrong. Take this out of the textbooks. It never happened in nature. But they still keep this in the textbooks. And they know it hasn't held up to examination, but they don't have any replacement evidence. Othniel Marsh made up this entire horse evolution idea in 1874. He made it up. He picked animals from all over the world. Modern horses are found in layers with the so-called ancient horses. The ancient horse, the Hyracotherum, is not even a horse. It's just like a hyrax, still alive today in Turkey and East Africa. The ribs, we can go all day about the difference between horses and the hyrax, okay? Tulsa Zoo finally took down their display because 2,000 people signed a petition saying, get this lie out of our zoo. They took it down for 6 months and then put it back up when nobody was watching. Peabody Museum still has the horse evolution on display, and that's only been proven wrong for 55 years. I know it takes a while to get displays up to date in your museum. But 55 years is long enough in my book, okay? Leaving that thing in the zoo is stupid. Or in a university, it's not true. I was in a debate one time, and this one professor, I was going through lies in the textbooks. I said, get that out of the textbooks. It's not true. He said, well, fine. He said, well, what are you going to replace all this stuff with? Now, that's stupid. I said, are you telling me we can't take a lie out of the textbooks unless we got a replacement? What you're trying to say is, folks, we want the kids to believe this theory. We've got to give them some evidence, and this is all we've got, and you're taking away our evidence. Now, you've got to find some more. Look, I didn't pick the dumb theory to begin with, okay? I don't believe it. Pick a new theory. That's the way science works. If you don't have any evidence for your theory, you get a new theory. The problem is, all the evidence for evolution has been proven wrong, but they don't want to take it out because there's no replacement. I'm not trying to get evolution out of the textbooks. I just want the lies out of the textbooks. Evolution will automatically go with it because there's nothing left to support it. The Bible says God formed the eye. Eyeballs are unbelievably complex. Charlie Darwin said, to suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection, absurd. And then he goes for 4 chapters after that and says how he thinks it happened anyway. The back of your eyeball is 1 square inch, called the retina. It contains 137 million light-sensitive cells, all wired to the brain. Now, my daddy started me off when I was about 7 building a ham radio. I've done a lot of electrical wiring in my life, built 9 houses. I've done all kinds of electrical wiring. My dad was an electrical engineer at Caterpillar Tractor Company. I cannot imagine hooking up 137 million connections in 1 square inch. My Heavenly Father did it. He's pretty smart. I debated a guy named Ed Buckner, who's an atheist in Buffalo, New York. He said the human eye is an example of poor design. I said, why would you say that, Ed? He said, well, the eye is wired backwards. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the blood vessels are in front of the retina. I said, yes, I know that. I taught biology and anatomy. He said, well, the octopus has a much better eye because their blood vessels are behind the retina. I said, well, Ed, let me explain something to you. We live in the air. Okay? Air is a very poor insulator for UV light, okay? So your eyeball has the blood vessels in front of the retina because that's your body's last defense against ultraviolet light. Now, octopus live in the water. Okay? Now, water blocks UV light. See, we have eyes designed for living in air, and they have eyes designed for living in water. Now, if you want to swap eyes with an octopus, you just enjoy yourself, but that's Stupid, okay? You're going to be blind in a few weeks, all right? What they're trying to say is, well, God wouldn't do it this way, so it must have evolved. That's a silly argument for evolution. They're trying to say poor design is proof of evolution. Porsche made a car one year. It was just a poor design. You could not get the spark plugs out without taking the motor mounts loose and lifting the motor up. That's a poor design. So does that prove nobody designed the Porsche? No. And they look at the human body today and think we are poor design. I say, first of all, fellas, you need to stop and consider something. What you're looking at right here is a copy off of a copy, 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 off of a copy of Adam. This same gene code's been copied so many times, it's amazing we can stand here and talk about it, okay? You're not looking at the original by a long shot, okay? This one is a poor example of the original. Getting worse, too, by the way, much poor example. It's stupid to say that poor design is evidence for evolution. The eyeball is so complex, you can walk into a room and look around the room, and in 1 second, your eye picks up enough information to keep the Cray computer busy for 100 years analyzing everything you picked up. Fastest computer in the world. This textbook says the complex structure of the human eye may be the product of millions of years of evolution. That's stupid. The eyeball had to be designed. This textbook shows the kids a reptile eye and a bird eye. And it says, boys and girls, right here, you must picture or imagine how evolution happened. Yeah, we can line up these eyes. Can't you just imagine how one changed to the other? No. The first debate I ever did, they called me up, University of West Florida. I'd just been in Pensacola for 6 months, and I've been writing letters to the editor about the evolution in the newspaper there. And boy, I stirred up a hornet's nest. I do that everywhere I go. Anyway, the university called me up and said, hey, would you like to come debate one of our professors? I had never had a debate in my life except with my wife, and I lost those every time. How many know what I'm talking about? Come on, get your hand up, you coward. Put your hand up. Well, so I did. I said, what do? I don't know anything about debates. They said, you send us 30 questions, and he'll send us 30 questions, and we'll pick them out of the hat. I said, okay. I sent the question. I said, an owl has a cylinder-shaped eyeball like a tin can, like a telescope. The owl cannot move his eyes in his head like you can. They're not round. They're can-shaped, cylinder-shaped. He's got like a little telescope. When he's looking at you, okay? He has to turn his whole head to look at something. Now, it gives him a disadvantage. He can't move his eyes, but the advantage is he can read the newspaper at the other end of the football field. If he could read and he cared what's going on. I said, now, most eyes have a round eyeball. This one has a cylinder-shaped eyeball. Would you please explain to me how this evolved? And how did the bird see in the meantime when it was partway cylinder and partway round? That question never came up, but anyway. So when they're telling you the eyeball evolved, it's just stupid, okay? It's not common sense, okay? Michael Behe is not a young earth creationist, but he's got a great book out called Darwin's Black Box. I highly recommend that book if you want to study the complexity of things in nature. For instance, every little bacteria swimming around has at least one hair on it, called a cilium. That little hair is attached to a rotary engine in the bacteria's skin. That little engine is so tiny that 8 million of them would fit on the stump of a human hair. Cut your hair off, 8 million motors will fit on a stump. Yet it turns 100,000 RPM and stops in 1/4 revolution and goes backwards 100,000 RPM. I've done a little bit of motor work. I've had 128 cars in my lifetime. I've rebuilt the motors, the differentials, the wobbleator shafts, the Knudten valves, the high-speed muffler bearings, filled the headlight fluid. I know how to work on cars, okay? I can't imagine building a motor that would turn 100,000 RPM. And they think this little bacteria motor happened by chance? As things get smaller, the fluid they're swimming through feels thicker. It's called a viscosity problem, okay? So a bacteria swimming through his little world is about like a human swimming through peanut butter. And that little bacteria, turning that little motor on the back of that thing, can swim the equivalent of a human swimming 60 miles an hour through peanut butter. We've got a model of this thing in our museum. This textbook says humans probably evolved from bacteria more than 4 billion years ago. They can swim 60 miles an hour. Sign them up for the Olympics, man. You think we evolved from them, we're getting worse, not better. Now that's just stupid, okay? There's no kind way to say that. They say fossils prove evolution. I say, guys, you got to be kidding. Fossils prove evolution. No fossil counts for evidence for evolution. None. Fossil record. There is no fossil record. There are a bunch of bones in the dirt. Now, you're putting your interpretation on them, okay? It's not a record. This guy says evolution is a fact, and the best evidence for evolution is the fossils. That's silly, okay? There is no fossil record. You cannot look back in the fossil record. You look at fossils in the present. You put your interpretation on them, okay? There is no fossil record. It's stupid to say that that's evidence. If you find a bone in the dirt, all you know is it died. You can't prove it had any kids that lived. You sure can't prove it had different kids. And why would you think a bone you found in the dirt can do something animals today cannot do, which is produce something other than their kind? No, the fossil record, that would not hold up 2 seconds as evidence in a court of law. This guy says, I said this one, there are no missing links, the whole chain is missing. Stephen Gould said, the absence of fossil evidence is a nagging problem for evolution. We got a good theory, if only we had some evidence. Now that's just stupid, Stephen, okay? By the way, Stephen Gould died with a set of my tapes on his library shelf. I went to visit him a few years before he died. He wasn't there to talk to his secretary. I donated my videotapes to Stephen Gould years ago. Had him sitting on right there next to his desk. Hope he watched them. Hope he got saved. Maybe he did. I don't know. Hope so. But to believe that we've got a good theory, we just don't have any evidence. Okay, well then maybe consider the theory might not be right, okay? Richard Goldschmidt said, the first bird hatched from a reptile egg. That's real stupid, okay? Then they say smaller is simpler. Well, that's silly, okay? Smaller is more complex. This textbook says all the many forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor found in a population of primitive unicellular organisms. Excuse me? A primitive unicellular organism? If it's single-celled, it's not primitive, it's complex. That's stupid to say that's simple. One little paramecium is more complex than the space shuttle, and you can put thousands of those into a drop of water. Smaller is not simpler. Here's a microchip inside a paperclip. It's not simple. This ant is holding a microchip that is capable of processing all the letters in the Bible 200 times per second. Let's compare the brain of a honeybee to a NASA Cray computer. The honeybee is tiny. The Cray computer is huge. We'd all agree there's a size difference, okay? The brain of a honeybee is pretty small. The Cray computer could do 6 billion calculations per second. I think they got a faster one now. But the YMP-C90 could do YMP-90 could do 6 billion calculations a second. It's estimated the honeybee's brain does 1,000 billion calculations per second. The Cray uses many megawatts. The honeybee uses 10 microwatts. Talk about energy efficient. You know, the honeybee not only makes honey, he flies on honey. That's his energy source. And the honeybee can fly 1,000,000 miles on 1 gallon of honey. How would you like a machine that gets 1,000,000 miles per gallon? Cray costs $48 million. The honeybee's brain is pretty cheap. You splat them on your windshield all the time. Many people scramble to help babysit the dumb Cray computer. If it breaks, man, you got to call in a whole crew to fix it. Honeybee has a self-healing computer. How'd you like one of those? Cray weighs 2,300 pounds. Honeybee doesn't weigh too much. Let's see. The Cray computer is huge, slow, inefficient, costs lots of money. You got to babysit it. But everybody knows it was designed. There isn't anybody with half a brain who would tell you the Cray came from an explosion in an electronics factory. But they turn right around and say the honeybee evolved. That's stupid, okay? Smaller is not simpler. Smaller is more complex. And the brain of a human's a lot more complex than a honeybee. The human brain's unbelievable. You've got the memory capacity of the entire British Library. You have the computational power in bits per second greater than the entire national telephone system. The human brain is absolutely phenomenal. One evolutionist told me that he thought the human brain was nothing but 3 pounds of chemicals that arranged themselves by chance over billions of years. I said, then how can you trust your thoughts and the conclusions you've come to? That's stupid, okay? Maybe, never mind. They say DNA proves evolution. Yes, boys and girls, we have evidence from molecular biology. Percentage of DNA sequences is talked about here. It says Darwin speculated all forms of life are related. This speculation has been verified. You think DNA has verified Darwin's theory? That's stupid. DNA is unbelievably complex. The DNA molecule in your body, the deoxyribonucleic acid, is the most complex molecule in the universe. If you took it and unwound 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 it, if you could ever get the thing untangled, it'd be about 7 feet long. And it'd be like a twisted ladder. Each half of the ladder is called the genes. That thing splits all the way down the middle, recombines when you make a new baby, and it gets all back together, winds itself all back up. Unbelievably complex. The average person has 50 trillion cells in their body. The DNA from all, if your entire body's DNA would only fill 2 tablespoons, but if you tied them all together, it would reach from Earth to the moon and back. 5 million round trips out of 2 tablespoons. If you typed out the code found in your DNA, when you got done typing that incredibly complex code, you'd have enough books to fill Grand Canyon 40 times. You think that happened by chance? Well, the probability of just one DNA coming by chance is 1 in 10 to the 119,000th power, which is a big number, when you consider the entire visible universe is 10 to the 28th inches in diameter. DNA happened by chance? I'm sorry, that's stupid. Now, you might not like the idea of there being a creator because that means you might have to answer to that creator someday. Okay, well, I can't help you then. I did a debate at Embry-Riddle University a couple months ago, 3 against 1, 3 professors against me. It was a slaughter. Those poor guys, I felt so sorry for them. Oh, man. The next day, the student who organized the debate said, "Would you guys like to do that again?" I said, "No." After the debate, we had a Q&A time, and one of the kids said, "I believe evolution's a fact." I said, "Well, let me ask you a question, son. Suppose, just suppose, creation was true. Suppose I'm right. Suppose there is a creator. And he owns this place. I mean, he made it, he owns it. Just suppose, okay? And he makes the rules." I said, "Would that change your lifestyle any?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, suppose the Creator gave us a book like the Bible that says, 'Thou shalt not commit adultery.' Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, no lust, no fornication, no pornography. Is this going to change your lifestyle any?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then tell me, have you accepted the evolution theory because you really have some evidence, or because you like the freedom from God?" He said, "Well, I've accepted it because I'm horny." I said, "Thank you, son. You may sit down." Folks, there is no scientific reason to reject the Bible. There is no scientific reason to accept the evolution theory. None. Now, you might have a reason to accept the evolution theory because of your lifestyle. Well, then I can't help you. Okay? But let me tell you, God created the heaven and the earth. God's going to come back and be the judge of this world one of these days. And if you haven't trusted Jesus Christ, His Son, to forgive you of your sins, you're in serious trouble. You're going to stand before God in trouble. You say, "Well, I'm a pretty good person." Oh, yeah? You ever lied? How many have ever told a lie? Put your hand up. You're doing another one. Okay. Bible says, 10 commandments, thou shalt not steal. How many ever stole something? Come on, you already told me you're a liar. Put your hand up, okay? Well, that's just 2. We already know we're all a bunch of lying thieves, okay? You think, people say, "Well, God's going to judge my good works against my bad." Who on earth told you that? Go to the judge and say, "Judge, I only murdered 1 person. Look at all the people I didn't murder. Surely my good works outweigh my bad. You better think that one through." And God will say, "Okay, I won't send you to hell for your good works. I'll send you there for the bad ones." Okay? How about it? What if you died today? We're going to cover in the next session a bunch more reasons why evolution is stupid, and it is. But I think Satan is using this theory to blind people, to give them a placebo. "Oh, I've got an answer to life. I know how we got here, and God didn't do it." It's absolutely a stupid idea. And Satan's laughing at you for believing in it. And I got probably, as Bill said he wanted 100 more reasons why evolution is stupid. I started going through that thinking, I don't think I can trim it down to 100. There are thousands of reasons why it's stupid. It just lacks normal intelligence. You know, it's common sense to look at something, when you find something designed, if I find a cell phone in the dirt, it's logical to say, somebody must have designed this. I don't have to see the designer. It's just logical there must have been a designer, period. Okay? When you're walking through the woods and you find a painting hanging on the tree, it's just logical to say, somebody painted it, even if you can't have any evidence of who did it. The painting is proof of the painter. The creation is proof of the Creator. And if you're here today and you're not saved, the Bible says you're going to hell. You say, I don't believe in hell. You can go to hell without believing in it. That won't affect God at all, okay? If you're not saved, that's why we do this. Our ministry is called Creation Science Evangelism. We stand without apology. The Bible's true. And we want to use the evidence for science and creation to evangelize. If you're here and you're not saved, I want to talk to you. I'm not going to call you stupid to your face. But evolution is a stupid idea. Now, if you believe it, wise up, okay? Quit believing that stuff. We'll be glad to show you how to get saved after the meeting. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be back here again, teaching on more reasons why evolution is stupid. We probably could do a series, Bill, of 20 hours on this topic. But we only got one more hour, so we'll get done as quick as we can here. Why evolution is stupid. We left off in the last session talking about DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the most complex molecule in the universe. To say that formed by chance is just plain stupid. But let's suppose it did. Chromosomes are the most complex molecule there is, and penicillin only have 2 of these chromosomes, these DNA strands. So they must have evolved first, and then slowly over millions of years, they got some more chromosomes and turned into a fruit fly. They have 8. Very slowly over millions of years, they developed more chromosomes and became a tomato, or possibly a housefly. They're twins. It's very tough to tell the difference between these two. And then slowly evolved into a pea, and then over millions of years, it became a bee. Now there you can see the similarity. Pea, bee, very similar, okay? And slowly, over millions of years, we had triplets. Either the possum, the redwood tree, or the kidney bean came first. I'm not sure. Tough to tell them apart, folks. They all have 22 chromosomes, you know. There's, let's see, possum, tree, kidney bean. Let's see, possum, kidney bean, evolution. Oh. And then slowly, over millions of years, we evolved enough chromosomes to be a human. Here we are with 46. If we can just get 2 more, we're going to be a tobacco plant. I know some already smell like it. Sometimes I'll get on the elevator and I'll say, man, you're evolving. You're way ahead of me. And maybe someday we'll have enough to be a carp. And it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but maybe star date 349572, we'll have enough chromosomes to be a fern. Why don't they talk about the chromosome number as evidence for evolution? They tell the kids 20 kinds of amino acids, that's true, make up all the proteins. It says, explain how this fact supports the idea that all life shares a common ancestor. Well, that's like saying all the books in the library have the same 26 basic letters. That's a good point. You see, boys and girls, that proves they all evolved from Morse code. No, teacher, somebody wrote those books, okay? That's just stupid to say that the fact that we all have 20 amino acids is proof we're related. See, the reason God designed it where we all have the same basic amino acids that make up the proteins is so that the brown cow can eat the green grass and give the white milk, and I can drink it and get the blonde hair. See, if we didn't have all the same basic building blocks, we could only eat each other. Think about it. Well, let's talk about evolution. I believe the hamster evolved first. They only live about 2 years. And then slowly, this is based on longevity now, slowly evolved into a cat and then a canary. They're very similar. You can see the lifespan. And then a dog and a chimpanzee. They're slow. You know, this is the real order of evolution. Humans are near the top. Turtles actually live slightly longer than humans, so they're probably the most evolved species on Earth. Or maybe we should arrange animals in order based upon their top speed. The peregrine falcon is the most evolved animal in the world. Below that's the cheetah, then the antelope, the coyote, the ostrich, all the way down to the garden snail, 0.03 miles an hour in high gear. Or maybe we should arrange the animals in order of how they evolve based upon their gestation period, how long they're pregnant. Elephants are the most evolved. They're pregnant 21 months. Hamsters only half of a month, 15 days. Maybe we should arrange the animals in order based upon their body weight. The blue whale's the most evolved. The shrew at a 1/4 ounce, the least evolved animal. I mean, they just make up these charts to say how we evolved. They say the humans and the orangutans are 96% similar in their DNA. And that proves a common ancestor 15 million years ago. Well, now hold on a minute. Barney Maddox was the leading genome researcher on the DNA project. He said, folks, the difference between the human and his nearest relative, the chimpanzee, is at least 1.6%. He said that doesn't sound like much, but calculated out, that's a gap of 48 million nucleotides, and a change of only 3 nucleotides is fatal to an animal. There is no possibility of change. They used to think we were 98.4% similar. They've now discovered it's actually 5% difference. So there are hundreds of millions of differences between humans and chimpanzees. His nearest relative, the chimpanzee, that's stupid, okay? Now, some of my ancestors swung by their necks, no question, but none of them swung by their tails, okay? Now, arranging animals in some kind of fictitious order doesn't prove anything. All they're doing is doing this on paper. Even if they find them in order, it wouldn't prove anything. I mean, if I get buried on top of a hamster, does that prove he's my grandpa? Even order of burial wouldn't prove anything. But I've been doing research on the evolution of the fork. I've put together fragmentary evidence for a long time. I believe over millions of years, probably the spoons evolved. It's quite obvious. You can see the difference there. And I believe the knife evolved to the spoon and then slowly became a 4-tine fork. And if you break one off, it's a threek. And if you break another one off, it's a took and then a wonk. Okay? But I felt like I knew I had it right, but I felt like I had a missing link. I found it one day flying to Connecticut on U.S. Air, the missing link. So the evolution of silverware is becoming very complete. Yeah. A lot of mutants didn't survive. When people found out I was researching the fork and evolution, they sent me all kinds of frauds. I mean, people are trying to get famous, okay? They were hoping for fame and fortune. This was an obvious fork head on a spoon handle, but my trained scientific eye caught it right away. That was a fraud. Of course, a lot of variations of races appeared along the way. Look, you can turn a cat to a cot to a dot to a dog, changing one letter at a time. You can play around with this for a while and turn yourself into a fool if you're not careful. Yeah. Now they tell the kids dinosaurs turned to birds. The Bible says the birds are made on the 5th day, reptiles made on the 6th day. Did you know everything about the evolution theory is backwards to the Bible? Every single thing is backwards. The Bible says man brought death into the world. Evolution says death brought man into the world. The Bible says God created man. Evolution says man created God. It could not be more opposite. This guy says, dinosaurs are alive as birds, scientist says. Oh, wow, scientist says. Well, that's proof of something, isn't it? That's stupid, okay? Dinosaurs are not alive as birds, okay? Textbook says birds are the descendants of dinosaurs. Yeah, all you got to do is put a few feathers on them and give them a shove, man. It's not that hard. Man. They say Archaeopteryx is proof of evolution. Archaeopteryx is the missing link. Yes, boys and girls, there it is, the missing link. Archaeopteryx is a bird. A 100% bird, a perching bird. Now, textbook says bird feathers evolved from scales that protected the dinosaurs. You think feathers evolved from scales? That's stupid, okay? Feathers are incredibly complex. Scales are folds in the skin. They attach to the skin differently. They develop from different genes on the chromosome. They're both made out of keratin, and that's where the similarity stops. Feathers did not evolve from scales. There's no similarity at all. I like to show this to evolutionists. This is, as far as I know, the world's largest rock group. And I'll say now, guys, do you think there's any chance that George Washington's face could have appeared on the rock, just by chance? Do you think the wind could have done that with abrasion or exfoliation or thermal expansion of the rock or erosion? I mean, what caused his face to appear on the rock? They'll say, well, that was designed by a guy named Borglum, and he built it. I say, right. Now I'll say, guys, do you think that George Washington himself, the real person, happened by chance? They'll say, oh, yeah. I say, wait a minute. You don't think his face could appear on a rock by chance, but you do think his entire complex anatomy, with 50 trillion cells and probably 20 redundant interlocking systems, happened by chance. Are you dumb in any other area? Had to be designed, man. They tell the kids in the textbooks, plants adapted to their environment. Yes, gills are an adaptation to living in water. Oh, why don't they use the word designed? And by the way, how did the fish live before they adapted the gills? Oh, well, you see, for millions of years, they all died. None of them lived. Oh. That's stupid, okay? Gills are not an adaptation to living in water. They're designed for living in water. But they don't want to use the word design because then some kid's going to say, who's the designer? They don't want to deal with that question. They somehow think all you got to do is get the molecules together and add energy and you can make life. Oh, let's try that. Let's put a frog in a blender and turn it on. In a matter of seconds, you will have frog nog. You will have all of the molecules required to make a frog in one place. Right? Now you can put it on puree, you can nuke it, microwave it, zap it, hook jumper cables to it. I don't care what you do to it. How long? You can add all the energy you want. How long will it take to reassemble the frog? It's not going to happen, okay? Putting molecules together and adding energy does not create life. That's stupid, okay? It has to be designed. They say homology proves evolution. I don't think so. Yes, boys and girls, one of the evidence is homologous structures. They'll say, you've got 2 bones in your wrist, the radius and the ulna. Yeah, look at this. The dolphin has 2 bones in his flipper. Wow. It says right here in the textbook, these homologous structures provide evidence that these animals evolved from a common ancestor. They do this in all the textbooks all over the country, all over the world, actually. Yes, boys and girls, this is comparative anatomy. Comparative anatomy provides further evidence of evolution. The commonalities suggest that these and other vertebrate animals are all related. They probably evolved from a common ancestor. That's stupid. They probably have a common designer. You know, the same guy designed them all. Not a common ancestor. Then they say we've got evidence from development. Yes, boys and girls, the human embryo, as it grows in the mother, has gill slits, they say. Darwin considered this the best evidence in favor of his theory, made up by a guy named Ernst Haeckel, who called it the biogenetic law. Their phrase back then was ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. In other words, the baby developing in the mother goes through the stages of evolution: fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal, farm, F-A-R-M. Well, the idea that sick mind Freud relied on was the idea that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. What? This textbook says, the presence of fish-like structures in embryos of different species shows these animals evolved from fish and share the basic pattern of fish development. It's as if the embryo retains a memory of its origins and copies them during its development. This is stupid. They say the baby has gills like a fish. Humans do not have gills like a fish, okay? Those little folds of skin develop into bones in the ear and glands in the throat. They never have anything to do with breathing, okay? I've seen folks that have 5 or 6 chins and they cannot breathe through any of them but the top one. Those are not gill slits. Ernst Haeckel made up that whole stupid idea in 1869. Anyway, we could skip all this. We won't have time. But you know, you can't get a high score on the SAT or ACT or college entrance exam. All of the major tests in college, to enter college, you have to answer with evolutionary answers, or you score lower. Huh, interesting. I got all the 2004 tests and looked at them. They're teaching this all over the place, that the embryo has gills. It's stupid. It was proven wrong in 1875. Get it out of the books. It's not true. This textbook says the humans have an appendix that is vestigial. You don't need it anymore. That's stupid. You need your appendix. It's part of your immune system, okay? If your appendix is taken out, you're going to have a serious problem. Now, sometimes you have to take it out. I understand, okay? It beats dying. But the appendix is required to activate killer B cells in your immune system, just like the thyroid activates killer T cells. If you take your appendix out, you got a much better chance of getting quite a few diseases. It's not vestigial. Just because you can live without it, so what? You can live without both your legs and both your arms and both your eyes and both your ears also. Doesn't prove you don't need it. This textbook says the whale has a vestigial pelvis. Yes, boys and girls, the whales have a vestigial pelvis and leg bone that serve no purpose. Just imagine whales walking around. It's true. Well, these are the bones they're talking about right there. Just imagine the whale walking around. Almost all whales have these. You know, I have tried to imagine them walking around, and I can't. It says the whale's pelvis is evidence of its evolution from 4-legged land-dwelling mammals. That's stupid. Those little bones are anchor points that special muscles attach to that allow the whales to reproduce. Without those special muscles and those special bones, you don't get any more baby whales. We've got in our museum in Florida a 15.5-foot python snake skin. If you look at the south end of that snake skin, it's got 2 little claws attached to little tiny bones that go up inside the snake's body. Come down and see it, Pensacola, Florida. Textbook says these are rudimentary hind legs of a python snake, reduced hind legs. That's stupid. Those little claws are used in mating. Okay, the snake doesn't have any arms, all right? And you can't talk and say, scoot over, honey. This has nothing whatsoever to do with walking on land, all right? It has to do with getting baby snakes. That's stupid, okay? Get that out of the book. Textbook says humans have a tailbone that is of no apparent use. That's stupid. I was in a debate one time and this atheist said, Hovind, I got proof for evolution. Humans have a tailbone they don't need anymore. I said, Mr. Patterson, I taught biology and anatomy. I happen to know there are 9 little muscles that attach to the tailbone. without which you cannot perform some valuable functions. I won't tell you what they all are, but trust me, you need those muscles. I said, now, I said, Mr. Patterson, if you believe the tailbone is vestigial, I, Kent Hovind, will pay to have yours removed. Bend over. He did not volunteer. Textbook says the coccyx is a small bone at the end of the human vertebral column. It has no present function and is thought to be the remainder of bones that once occupied the long tail of a tree-living ancestor. This is what your kids are being taught in school, folks. Look, I hate to say this, but the problem in the textbooks is not fixable in the short term. Get your kids out. The ship is going down. Get them out. The tailbone is not, you say, I can't afford it. Well, sell the car and get a bike, okay? Sell the house and get a tent, okay? But get them out. Okay. Tailbone is not vestigial. This one says the Colorado River, over millions of years, the Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon from solid rock. Colorado River cut through layer upon layer of rock over millions of years. Well, these two, you guys know what snow lines are here in Denver. The red lines indicate the snow line. There's a ridge in between those lines. The river enters on the far right and flows downhill 270 miles and comes out the other side through the Grand Canyon. If you do a schematic view, it looks like this. The river is 2,800-foot elevation when it enters the canyon. The ground goes up as high as nearly 8,000 feet, 8,500 feet above sea level. A couple things to consider about this. The top of the canyon is higher than the bottom. The river only runs through the bottom. The top is higher than where the river enters the canyon by 4,000 feet. Rivers don't flow uphill. There is no delta. Nobody knows where the mud is that washed out of there. That river did not make that canyon. Grand Canyon's a washed out spillway from a couple of big lakes. So when the textbook says the Colorado River carved it over millions of years, that's stupid. Unless they got a river that flows uphill, doesn't work. Textbook says, boys and girls, the layers of rock are different ages. This one's 70 million years old. They say the layers of rock are different ages. Now hold on a minute. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up connecting these rock layers. If you get petrified trees standing up connecting a bunch of rock layers, I don't think it's logical to say the layers are different ages. How long does a dead tree stand up around here in Denver before it falls over? 4 or 5 years? No, these layers are not different ages. It's just not possible. That's stupid. Okay, the layers all formed during the flood in the days of Noah. All over the world are bent rock layers. It's pretty hard to bend rock like that. They say the layers are different ages, and yet they're all bent with no fracture marks in the layers. I mean, if one layer was deposited on top of another one, the bottom was going to be hard eventually before the other one. And here we are seeing these twisted, bent rock layers all over the place, and they're trying to tell us the layers are different ages. Well, maybe by a few weeks or months or minutes during a flood. But to say the layers are different ages when there are no internal fracture marks is just plain stupid. They're not different layers. They all formed in the flood in the days of Noah. They got bent while they were soft. This guy says the rocks date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. That's stupid. They teach us that the fossils are sorted by how they evolved. Clams are found at the bottom because clams evolved first, and birds are found at the top because birds evolved last. Well, moving water sorts things automatically by all sorts of factors, okay? Actually, maybe fossils are sorted based upon their habitat. It could be the clams are found at the bottom because they're already at the bottom when the flood starts. That's where they live. Maybe they're sorted based upon intelligence. As far as anybody can figure out, clams aren't too bright. Maybe they're sorted based upon mobility. Did you know clams can't run very fast? Maybe they're sorted based upon body density. Maybe it's a combination of all those. Don't tell me they're sorted by evolutionary process. That's stupid. They look at erosion marks like Bryce Canyon and say, oh yeah, it took millions of years. See all that erosion? Wow, millions of years of erosion. Oh, wait a minute. That's a pile of dirt in my backyard. Here's millions of years of erosion along a highway built a few months ago. Ancient seabed. Look at all the, buttes sticking up there and pillars and columns. Oh, millions and millions of years of erosion. All you got to do is fly out west and look out the window of the airplane once in a while, and you'll see huge erosion marks all over the place. You know, the very simplest things could not evolve. There's an excellent, very simple book, so cute. We sell it in our ministry, called Exploding the Big Bang, Could a Box Evolve? Could just a cardboard box evolve? And there's a whole chapter explaining how cardboard boxes are made. Is it possible that a cardboard box could evolve? How about an ink pen? How about a paper clip? Just takes some simple objects and shows how dumb it is to think that a human body could evolve. But the textbook says all the many forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor, found in a population of primitive unicellular organisms. We all evolved from a bacteria. That's stupid. The blue whale grows to 49 tons in 1 year. That's a growth rate of 330 billion times from what it started. If humans did that, you'd weigh a lot. Blue whales slowly tried to evolve this ability over millions of years. None of them survived, of course. They all died. Blue whale evolved from a bacteria. That's stupid, okay? The seahorse, the only fish that swims in the upright position, and the male hatches the eggs. Interesting. Where did this evolve from? Who's its ancestor? This evolved from a bacteria? That's stupid, I think. Sperm whale can dive 10,000 feet, stay there for 2 hours underwater. You know the pressure at 10,000 feet is 620,000 pounds per square foot. As the sperm whale slowly tried to evolve this ability over millions of years, none of them survived. They all died. The sperm whale evolved from a bacteria? I'm sorry, folks, that's just stupid, okay? The platypus, what did it evolve from? It has hair, lays eggs, senses electrical signals in its prey's muscles. When the crawdads are trying to crawl away from this thing, the muscles contract. This thing can sense the muscle contraction in the crawdad. Bats, with their echolocation, can sense a moth and go pick it out of the air, but the moth can hear the echolocation and drop. How did the moth evolve that? How did the bat evolve the echolocation? The platypus evolved from bacteria? It's just stupid, okay? Bottlenose whale can dive 3,000 feet down in 2 minutes. Try that. Watch what happens to your eardrums. A human attempting this would have multiple medical problems and die almost instantly. This evolved from a bacteria? I'm sorry, that's stupid. Rhinoceros beetle can carry 850 times its own weight. That's like me carrying 17,000 pounds. What did this evolve from? Who's its ancestor? You think it evolved from a bacteria? I'm sorry, I think that's stupid. You can believe that if you want, but don't call it science, okay? The giraffe has a 2-foot heart that pumps blood up 10 feet. Then when it bends down to get a drink, it's got a special blood cushion to absorb the shock of all this pressure being pushed down to its brain. The giraffe is getting a drink. He hears a lion roar. He throws his head up in the air 17 feet and runs off. Go from 0 to 17 feet in about a quarter second, and you try to run off and see what happens. You take about 3 steps and fall over. It evolved from a bacteria? I don't think so. The woodpecker has a tongue that goes in the back of his head, goes all the way around, anchors in his left nostril. No other bird has a tongue anything close to the woodpecker's tongue. What did it evolve from? Who's its ancestor? It has shock absorbers around its brain to absorb the shock. The woodpecker can peck the tree, back its head out, open its eyes, focus on the tree, close its eyes, and peck again. If it had its eyes open when it pecked, its eyeballs would pop out. It can open its eyes, focus, close them, and peck, like, 40 times a second? Where did it evolve from? From a bacteria. I think that's stupid, okay? The beaver, amazing animal, has its teeth that the outside is hard, the inside of the teeth are soft. Every time they chew, they wear off the inside of the teeth, which means the outside is always sharp. Self-sharpening teeth. Pretty slick. It's an engineer of amazing ability. The beaver can cut down a tree limb and swim across a river. Here he is carrying something with a heavy drag. He's swimming. He's compensating to know that he ends up in the right spot without being carried downstream by the extra drag of this branch. Yeah, for millions of years, they all got washed downstream and died. None of them survived, yeah. Came from bacteria. I just think that's stupid, okay? The golden plover goes to Alaska, lays its eggs, puts on 70 grams of fat, raises the babies for a few weeks, and then it takes off and flies 88 hours nonstop to Hawaii. It burns 1 gram of fat per hour. It's only got 70 grams. It needs 88 grams to make it. So they fly in V formation, and they're always switching who's the leader. The leader takes the brunt of the airflow, All the rest of them save enough energy that they land in Hawaii using only 70 grams of fat. Several weeks later, the babies take off from Alaska and fly to Hawaii. They've never been there. What did it evolve from? How did it make it? Evolved from a bacteria. I think that's stupid, okay? I think it was designed. Dragonfly is the most amazing insect on the planet, I think. They have the best eyes of any insect. They have up to 30,000 eye lenses. They can see almost all directions. They can fly frontwards and backwards. They can fly 20 miles an hour. They spend a year to year and a half, 2 years as a larva. Then they develop into adults. Just study the dragonfly. It'll blow your mind. Evolved from bacteria, I think that's stupid, okay? Then they talk about carbon dating as proof for evolution. Well, when they first invented it in 1949, the lower leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old, but the skin was 21,000. It's not working, okay? 1963, living mollusk shells dated 2,300 years old. Still not working. 1970, they said if a carbon date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it does not entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. If it's completely out of date, we drop it. They pick the dates they want. 1971, freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. It's not working. 1975, one part of a mammoth is 40,000 years old, another part's 26,000. You talk about a slow birth. And we could spend all day on carbon dating. Living snails carbon date 27,000 years old. It just doesn't work, okay? You can go all through history, it doesn't work. This guy says, in the last 2 years, an absolute date was obtained for the Gandong beds. It has the interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. That's stupid, okay? Not only is the theory stupid, it's dangerous. Charlie Darwin said, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. If evolution is true, has one type of man evolved farther than the rest? Henry Fairfield Osborn said the standard average intelligence of the average adult Negro is similar to the 11-year-old youth of the species Homo sapien. Do you mean Negroes are not Homo sapien, Henry? That's stupid, okay? Thomas Huxley said, no rational man cognizant of the facts believes the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior of the white man. That's stupid. The Mormons teach that the Negroes don't have, they used to teach anyway, that they could not be saved. They were cursed with the curse of Cain. That's stupid. Ernst Haeckel said the mental life of savages rises little above the higher animals, especially the apes, with which they are genealogically connected. Their intelligence moves within the narrowest bounds, and one can no more or no less speak of their reason than that of the more intelligent animals. These lower races, such as the Vedas or Australian Negroes, are psychologically nearer to the mammals, apes or dogs, than to civilized Europeans. We must, therefore, assign a totally different value to their lives. That's stupid and dangerous. But if you've seen the movie Quigley Down Under, where they called Quigley down to come shoot the Aborigines, that's exactly what was happening. They were killing Aborigines. They thought the Australian Negroes were inferior. These two folks went down there to collect skulls for museums. Article right here says, the New South Wales missionary was a horrified witness to the slaughter by mounted police of a group of dozens of Aboriginal men, women, children. 45 heads were boiled down, the best 10 skulls packed off for overseas. They killed them to get their heads for museums to show evolution. 1904, World's Fair was held in St. Louis. 2,000 primitive people were put on display to show evolution, how that the pygmies slowly evolved to the modern white man. Oda Benga was taken away from his wife and 2 kids and put in a cage with chimpanzees. He was a pygmy from Africa. He went insane and killed himself. Theodore Roosevelt thought the Indians were an inferior species because he thought they hadn't evolved as far. You won't understand what happened to the Indians until you realize what happened with the evolution theory teaching this stuff, that some of the races are more important than others. Roosevelt said, I wish the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. He thought the Indians, the immigrants from Europe, Scotland, Ireland, or the Orient were a threat to American society because they were inferior. How many of you have ancestors from one of those places? See, you're inferior. Yeah. 1871, Congress scrapped all treaties with the Indians because they thought, they're just animals, that they hadn't evolved as far. You ought to read about the Trail of Tears. Of course, evolution came out way before 1859 with Darwin's book. Darwin just made it popular. It's stupid to teach that Indians or anybody else is inferior. Comrade Stalin went to a Christian school as a kid. He read Darwin's book and became an atheist. Darwin's book changed his life forever. Comrade Stalin killed between 60 and 100 million of his own people. You ought to read any of the books by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Somebody gave me one once. Said, well, Hovind, you got to read this book, The Gulag Archipelago. I said, man, this thing's 900 pages. He said, well, just read the first 5. I said, okay. 3 days later, I finally got to go to bed. I said, man, that was an awesome book. I couldn't put it down. It's stupid to say that somebody's inferior because of their skin color or something else. During World War II, the Germans overran Poland from one side. The Russians overran them from the other side. They captured all the Polish officers and executed them. The Russians finally admitted this, that 14,700 Polish officers were executed at one forest. They put hoods over their head and shot them in the back of the head because they thought they were Poles. They were inferior. That's stupid and dangerous. Pol Pot, the leader of Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, killed a third of his entire population because he thought he was trying to speed up the process of evolution. That's stupid. Read about the killing fields or Khmer Rouge, what happened over there. When Mao Zedong took over China, they killed 60 million people when he took over China. He wanted to speed up the evolution process. It's stupid, folks. Adolf Hitler's mind was captivated by evolutionary thinking, probably since he was a boy. Evolutionary ideas lie at the basis of all that is worst in Mein Kampf. Hitler thought the Jews were criminals because they were breathing air and drinking water and eating food that belonged to the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans. He said, nature does not desire the mating of weaker with stronger individuals, even less does she desire the blending of a higher with a lower race. Adolf Hitler's book, Mein Kampf, talks about racial crossing all over the place. Higher races. Who's a higher race, Adolf? Hitler thought the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegians were close to pure Aryan. Did you get all that? The blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian. Vorden står det till idag. Ja, sure. Hey there, fella. Ufta. And he thought the Germans were mostly Aryan. The Mediterraneans are slightly Aryan. The Slavics are half Aryan, half ape. Orientals are slightly ape. Black Africans are mostly ape. And Jews are close to pure ape. That's the list Hitler was working off of. He hated the Jews. He also hated the blacks. Olympics were held in 1936 in Germany. Jesse Owens, the black American athlete, won the most gold medals. Hitler said, it's not right to make my men race against this animal. Well, Hitler, that's stupid. He's as much a man as you are, probably more. Textbook says you're an animal. Kids, don't you buy that for a second. That's stupid. You're not an animal. I've seen some look like it, okay? I've seen some act like it. You're not just an animal. You're made in God's image. You're going to answer to God one of these days for everything you've ever said or thought or done. Arthur Keith said, evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. We don't want to believe this theory. Well, that's a stupid reason to go to hell, because you don't like the theory of that God might have made the world. Julian Huxley said, I suppose the reason we leapt at the origin of species was the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. That's stupid. The Bible says they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do things which are not convenient. That's dangerous. Can you imagine if God gave up on you? Wow. Maybe you're here today. Somebody dragged you here and said, oh, you got to come to this meeting. I want you to come. And you believe you came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago because that's what you've been taught in school. God is not willing that any should perish. But to accept the idea that you came from a rock and to reject the idea that God created this world, it is stupid, okay? I'm sorry. There's no kind way to say it. The Bible says God cannot lie. He promised, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Now that's smart. That's the deal of the century, the deal of a lifetime. God says, here, I'll take all your sins, throw them as far as east is from the west, and I'll give you my righteousness on your account. On account now, you don't have any. That's what I did 36 years ago. I said, Lord, I'm a sinner. He said, you can say that again. I said, Lord, I deserve to go to hell. He said, you can say that again too. I said, but Lord, I want you to save me. I want you to forgive me based on what Jesus did. Wow, he did. He'll do the same for you. Let's summarize here. God made this world. He owns it. He makes the rules, and we're guilty of breaking his rules. He told us pretty clearly, don't lie. We've all lied. Don't steal. We've stolen. You can read the whole list and find out we're guilty. We're going to have to be punished or find a substitute. And that's where Jesus comes in. 36 years ago, I asked the Lord to come in my heart and save me. What if he died today? Where would you go? If you're not sure you're saved, you got to think about it. You're going to be dead for a long time. I mean, a really, really long time. And if you're not sure you're going to heaven, I think it's stupid to get out on that highway. Have you seen the way they drive here in Colorado? Man, you have got some rednecks moved out west here, folks. I'm telling you what. I'm going to die someday. I'm going to try to make it the last thing I do, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen to you too. All you get's that little bitty dash between two dates. My recommendation would be you take your little dash and say, Lord, you can have it. You can do something with it. What are you doing with your little dash? The guy who's third in the nation in racing motorcycles got saved in my seminar. He came to next year when I was preaching up there in Connecticut. He said, hey, Brother Hovind, I'm so excited. It's great living for the Lord. He said, let me take you to breakfast tomorrow. I said, that'd be great. He said, I'll bring one of my bikes. You can test drive it. I said, okay. I've got a Honda 250. He brought his Honda 900 that had been blueprinted and stroked and bored and balanced, and I'm not sure what all they did to it. But it was not your normal Honda 900. He said, try it out, Brother Hovind. I said, okay. I took it off in first gear. Boom! Just about broke my neck. I hit second gear. Boom! I was just about to drop it into third when I glanced down and realized I am going 90 miles an hour in second gear. It has 6 gears. I brought it back. I was shaking like a leaf. I said, how fast does it go? He said, I don't know. But guess what he wants? A faster bike. Hey, the people that have 80 pairs of shoes in their closet, do you know what they want? More shoes. People that have a big house, guess what they want? A bigger house. People that shoot the 10-point buck, guess what they want? They want to shoot a 12-point. People that have $1 million in the bank, guess what they want? More. It takes us a whole lifetime to figure out things here aren't going to satisfy. They just aren't. I'll tell you one thing I found that satisfies. Give your little dash to Jesus. Say, do something with this. You can have it. One little boy came to Jesus one day and said, Jesus, you look like you're hungry. You've been out here preaching all day. You can have my sack lunch. I ain't got much. I only got five biscuits and 2 fish sticks. Jesus said, well, son, I can have the whole thing. He said, yeah. He said, well, son, sit down right there. Watch this. Jesus fed 5,000 men plus women plus children out of that one little boy's lunch, including that little boy. That's pretty cool. He could have kept his lunch and fed himself, but he decided to give it away. And he still fed himself and 20,000 more people. Plus brought home 12 baskets full of fragments. You just can't beat a deal like that. Now, you can save your little life and use it for yourself if you want. That's your prerogative. I don't care what you do. You can work hard and make a bunch of money and die rich. Okay. You're going to die either way. Or you can give your little dash to Jesus. Say, Lord, would you do something with this? Some of you need to start a ministry. I'll tell you what, Denver needs a creation museum. Go to visit Red Rock Amphitheater. I went up there one day and there's all these dinosaur footprints on the hillside. How many have been up there? Red Rock Amphitheater, you know the dinosaur footprints? I stopped up there looking at these dinosaur footprints on the hillside, and this old man was standing up there. He's looking at them, you know. Pretty soon a school bus stopped. And a bunch of kids got out. This old man walked over and said, "Hey, boys and girls, I'm a member of the club called Friends of the Dinosaurs. Let me tell you about these dinosaur footprints." He said, "Millions of years ago, dinosaurs were walking along the beach, and they left their footprints, and they hardened. And then over millions and millions of years, the mountains lifted up, and now the footprints are at an angle like that." After the kids got on the bus and left, I said, "Hey, do you own this property?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, who does?" He said, "Well, this is state property." I said, "Now, do you get paid to do this, to give these tours to the kids?" He said, "No, I just volunteer my time." I said, "So you don't own the property and you just volunteer to do this?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." Next school bus stopped. I was a little younger and could run a little faster. And I got there first. Hey, boys and girls, let me tell you about these footprints. About 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. The whole world was in panic. Noah had all the critters safe on the ark, but the rest of the world, it was disaster. And some dinosaurs were running, trying to get away from the flood. And these footprints got covered up with mud and preserved. And then during the last part of the flood, the Bible says in Psalm 104, the mountains arose, the valleys sank down, the water rushed off. And these mountains formed about 4,400 years ago in the flood. That guy was so angry, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. I know CPR, but I thought, you know. If you're a Christian, what on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? Everybody ought to find something to do. People say, "Hovind, did God call you to start a ministry on creation?" I don't know. I never got a letter or a phone call. It just needs to be done. Now, kids, you go to sleep. You won't understand this. Kids, you may go to sleep. Parents, you'll understand. You know, mom can wash the clothes, dry them, fold them, and set them by the bedroom door. The kid comes in and doesn't even see them. How many know what I'm talking about? Now, come on. Didn't you see those clothes? I think God's up in heaven looking down at some of his kids, maybe some in this room. Can't you find something to do for my kingdom? You know, witness to somebody. Give them a gospel tract. You say, "Oh, I don't want to drive them off." What are you going to drive them off to? Hell number 2? Find something to do. If we can help any way we can, that's what we're here for. Thank you so much. Dismissed.
Once in a while, I get people that that claim they don't believe in evolution. And my response generally is, why not? Really, why not?
You guys believe 20 billion years ago there was a big bang where nothing exploded and produced everything. 4.6 billion years ago the earth cooled down, made a hard rocky crust. It rained on the rocks for millions of years, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive 3 billion years ago. Found somebody to marry. And something to eat, of course, and slowly evolved into everything we see today. There are some lies in our science books. Taught it for 15 years. Even though I'm not teaching it anymore, I still like to study. It's so many neat things to learn. We're going to cover some of that tonight. I'm not against science, I'm not against schools, I'm not against teachers. Because most of them don't know what they believe. You have to tell them. They teach the kids it all started with a big bang 20 billion years ago. What exploded? This is what the textbooks teach.
Before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Literally nothing. An infinitesimal nugget of space. And then something happened, triggering the most colossal explosion in history.
Yes, boys and girls, you see, nothing exploded, and here we are. So I asked this professor if I could ask him some questions about the Big Bang. I said, where did all this matter come from? He said, well, we don't know that for sure. I said, well, sir, would you please tell me where the laws came from? The universe is run by laws, gravity, centrifugal force, inertia. Who gave the laws? He said, we don't know that either. I said, sir, could you tell me where the energy came from? You know, it takes energy to make a Big Bang. Who bought the gas to run this machine anyway? He said, we don't know that either. I said, sir, could I ask you another question? He said, sure. What else would you like to know? Else? What do you mean else? You haven't told me nothing yet. I said, does Berkeley have a merry-go-round? You see, if a spinning object breaks apart in a frictionless environment, the fragments will all spin the same direction. The professor said, yes, I understand about the conservation of angular momentum. I said, well, good. I'd like to ask you a question then, sir. If the whole universe began as a swirling dot, like you said, why do two planets spin backwards? He said, that's interesting. I said, no, that's more than interesting. It's kind of hard on your Big Bang Theory. Not only that, 6 of the moons are spinning backwards. Why? He said, I don't know. Why do you think they're going backwards? I was hoping he was going to ask that. I said, okay, now, sir, hold it. If I told you that I believe God created the heaven and the earth like the Bible teaches, you're going to say, and where did God come from? And I don't know. But you said, well, we don't know that for sure. We don't know that either. Don't tell me my theory is religious and yours is science. Oh, no, sir, they're both religious. Evolution is a religion. You have to believe. So I asked the professor, where did the matter come from? He said, I don't know. So basically, I believe in the beginning God, and you believe in the beginning dirt. One professor was getting kind of upset about this time. He said, Mr. Hovind, there are hundreds of varieties of dogs in the world. He said, you mean to tell me that you believe all these dogs came from 2 dogs off of Noah's Ark? You expect me to believe that? I said, sir, would you look at what you're teaching your students? You're teaching your students that all the dogs in the world came from a rock.
Charles Darwin was disciplined. I mean, he did these extraordinary experiments, this series of experiments.
Then they're going to tell the kids, well, we have evidence for this theory. Charlie Darwin stopped off at these islands right there called the Galapagos Islands. Charlie studied the birds very carefully and said, you know what? I think all these birds had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. It was a bird. You see 14 kinds of birds, and you conclude that birds and bananas are related.
Here are these ancient dinosaur bones or fossils.
They tell the kids they have evidence of evolution from fossils. I don't think so. If you find a fossil in the dirt, all you know is it died. You don't know that it had any kids. And you sure don't know that it had different kids. You bring in a bone to the judge. Judge, I found this bone in the dirt. This is the ancestor of all the humans today. They would laugh at you. You don't know that that's the ancestor of anybody. And why on earth would you think a bone in the dirt can do something animals today cannot do? They'll say, boys and girls, you have 2 bones in your wrist, radius and ulna. And boys and girls, look at the whale's flipper carefully. Did you know the whale has 2 bones in his flipper? And they're called the radius and the ulna? Same as ours. Wow. Who named them, teacher? The whale? Think about it.
I'm here to tell my people it's time to stop believing bull just because I tell you bull with a straight look on their face. Evolution say people came from monkeys. And the question is, why is there still monkeys? Is these the retarded monkeys? They didn't turn into people just yet.
Even Stephen Gould admitted the absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages is a persistent and nagging problem for evolution. See, what's happened, these guys have looked for missing links in the fossil record. They can't find any, and so they say, well, maybe evolution happened so fast it wasn't preserved. Maybe a reptile laid an egg and a bird hatched out. Well, who did that bird marry?
This process that brought us to be is billions of years old. It happens very fast. Billions of years fast. Here is radioactivity.
We're going to tell the kids in the late 1940s they invented carbon dating. We're going to explain a little bit about radiometric dating and how it's supposed to work, and then show you that it does not work, okay? It sounds good, but there are some assumptions that mess everything up. If we had walked into a room and found a candle burning on the table, and I asked you the question, when was it lit? You say, I don't know, Mr. Hovind, it's burning when I got here. Okay, well then let's do some empirical science. Let's measure the height of the candle. Suppose the candle is 7 inches tall. Who can tell me when it was lit? Okay, nobody. Let's do some more empirical science. Let's measure the rate of burn. Suppose we determine it's burning 1 inch an hour. When was it lit? You're going to have a hard time telling me unless you're willing to make some assumptions. You find a fossil in the dirt, you can measure how much C14 is in it. Very accurately, by the way. And you can measure how fast it's decaying. That's just like measuring the height of your candle and how fast it's burning. Now, when did that animal die? You don't have a clue. Here's what you ought to consider about carbon dating. Samples of known age, it doesn't work. If it's a sample of unknown age, it is assumed to work.
It's just really a hard thing. It's really a hard thing. Your world just becomes fantastically complicated when you don't believe in evolution.
Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. Shells from living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old. Living penguins, carbon dated 8,000 years old. One part of Dima was 40,000 years old, another part was 26,000, and the wood next to it is 9,000. Then they tell the kids about the geologic column. They say each of the layers is a different age, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archeozoic, all them Zoic boys. Now, if you get a petrified tree standing up, running through different rock layers, I don't think it's smart to say those layers are vastly different ages. Those trees did not get slowly covered by the sediments over millions of years. They would rot and fall down.
Crazy.
They'll say, boys and girls, you have an appendix that you don't need anymore. That's a vestigial structure. That's proof of evolution. Well, excuse me, you do need your appendix. The appendix is part of your immune system. If your appendix is taken out, you can still live, okay? But it increases your susceptibility to quite a few diseases. You could live without both your legs and both your arms and both your eyes also. That doesn't prove you don't need them. There are no vestigial organs. And even if there were, that would be the opposite of evolution. That's losing, not gaining. I was taught when I went to school, man used to have a tail, but he lost it because he didn't need it. I thought, didn't need it? Have you ever thought how handy a tail would be? Have you ever come to the door with 2 sacks of groceries? Wouldn't that be nice, man, be able to grab that door and walk right around and get in it? Lost it because we didn't need it. Man, you could drive the car and tune the radio knob and hold the Coke at the same time.
What we're finding is that natural selection seems to be an incredibly important factor in generating new species.
Natural selection, the key evolutionary mechanism Darwin identified.
The bad designs get eaten by the good ones, and so all you have is good ones.
Why is there still monkeys?
Natural selection doesn't cause any evolution. It makes sure the bad ones don't survive, but it's not going to change it to something else.
That's what evolution is.
If you worked in a factory that produced cars, and your job was to check for defects, and you caught every single mistake, and you rejected it, how long would it take that process to change the car to an airplane? You say it'll never change it. That's my point. The students are taught we have evidence from development. Darwin considered this by far the strongest single class of evidence. This textbook says the human embryo growing in the mother has gills like a fish. Those little folds of skin are not gills. Those little wrinkles under your chin when you're growing up later develop into bones in the ear and glands in the throat. They never have anything to do with breathing. I've seen folks that have 5 or 6 chins and they can't breathe through any of them but the top one. Those are not gill slits. Ernst Haeckel, though, said the turning point in his thinking was when he read Darwin's book. He made huge charts of his posters of his drawings of these embryos and traveled all over Germany and just about by himself converted the Germans to believing in evolution. Haeckel took a drawing of a dog and a human embryo and he changed them to make them look exactly alike. On top are Haeckel's fake drawings. Underneath are actual photographs of what he claimed he was drawing a picture of. Now, either he's a lousy artist or he's a liar. Well, it turns out he's a liar. He was convicted of fraud by his own university, proven to be a fraud. But guess what? Haeckel's fake drawings are still used in textbooks in your state right now. It's only been proven wrong 125 years ago. I know it takes a while to get textbooks up to date, but that ought to be plenty of time. Adolf Hitler said, "You let me control the textbooks, I'll control the state." Watch this sentence here carefully. Some kid's doing this for homework tonight. Boys and girls, do you think humans are still evolving? Now, what kind of question is that? Doesn't that question assume that evolution has happened? What if a kid doesn't believe in evolution? How's he supposed to do his homework tonight? That question does not teach him how to think critically. That teaches him what to think, not how to think. And when the kid gets done with this course, he's going to think he knows how to think. But he doesn't. He knows how to be told what to think. Brainwashing at taxpayer expense. They want to use my tax dollars to teach that to your kids in our schools.
If you want to deny evolution, that's fine. But don't make your kids do it, because we need them.
And that's where the problem comes in. Okay? If you want to believe in the Big Bang, just enjoy yourself, but keep your religion at home. The Russian atheist astronomer came to America and spoke at one of the universities, and he started off his speech, he said, folks, either there is a God or there isn't. Both possibilities are frightening. If there is no God, we're in trouble. We're hurtling through space around the sun right now at 66,000 miles an hour, and nobody's in charge. That's a scary thought. But if God made the world, He owns it. That means He makes the rules. You see, if there is a God, we better find out who He is, and find out what He wants, and do what He says. Malcolm Muggeridge said, I am convinced the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it's been applied, will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future.
We too old, we too smart to believe. Don't make no sense. You too old to be believing in evolution.
It's a joke. And it would be a joke if it weren't for the tragic results. How many kids are taught this thing every day and believe it, and it destroys their faith?
Find you something to believe in. Whole thing, who do you even pray to? Nobody.
Hey, if you died today, where would you go? You ought to think about it, because you will be dead for a long time. Doesn't matter how long you live, you're going to be dead longer than that. You know, George Washington died 200 years ago, and he's still dead. How much longer does he have to go? You're going to be dead for a long time. All you get in this life is a little bitty dash between two dates. Just a little, and it's gone. What are you going to do with your dash? Where would you go if you died? Now, if you're not sure you're going to heaven, you ought to give your heart to the Lord and get saved. Say, Lord, you may have it, the whole thing. If you are saved, you ought to find something to do for the Lord. And you ought to quit worrying about getting a fancier car and a fancier house and start worrying about who's going to heaven or hell. Maybe God gave you that good job so you can give some money to missionaries, not so you can build a bigger, fancier house. God loves you. God has a plan for your life. And if you don't want it, well, that's your business. But the devil is laughing at you for believing in that. But God loves you, and He wants you to come to heaven. And if you'd like to find out how to go to heaven, come see me. I'll be glad to show you.
The Big Bang. Before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Literally nothing. Nothing created everything.
The Big Bang is an amazingly difficult thing to wrap your brain around, which isn't surprising.
13.7 billion years ago, we think it was tiny. Nothing, literally nothing, was tiny. And then something happened. Nothing created all the matter we see in the universe today. Nothing is more powerful than nothing. And that's what trips most of us up.
It was the explosion of
nothing.
Find you something to believe in. World getting crazy. Hey, you better believe something. Something. Something.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club. We're going to continue talking with Carl Gallups today. He's a #1 best-selling author, a video producer, talk radio host, guest commentator, published author, senior pastor, former law enforcement officer, Tea Party speaker, television and radio host, and founder of the world-famous P.P. Simmons YouTube channel. And he has expertise in the Obama birther controversy, biblical and prophetic topics, Middle East events, biblical apologetics conference, and much more. So, Carl, welcome back to the Prophecy Club.
Oh, thank you, Stan. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
All right, now let's talk about evolution and how your book deals with that and whether it's really a settled scientific fact.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking me that. Well, you know, my book, The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith, is a sweeping defense of the Christian faith, and it covers dozens of topics, but you know, evolution is kind of the foundation to all of the godlessness in this world, in the world we live in. In other words, you couldn't have an abortion holocaust unless you first convince people that there is no God and that we just came from a random happenstance and that we're nothing more than descendants of a common ancestor of the chimps. You couldn't have an abortion holocaust. You couldn't have the radical homosexual movement. You couldn't have the redefinition of marriage. You couldn't have the sexual revolution. You couldn't have the Jewish Holocaust. All of these evils, the government is God kind of socialist, communist flavor, you couldn't have any of that if it were not for people swallowing hook, line, and sinker this idea of evolution. So I have to deal with that, and my book does take several chapters to deal with this idea of evolution. And I got to say, I don't really set out to disprove evolution in my book, although by the time you finish my book, you realize that it's mainly a bunch of hokum and pseudoscience. But to be fair, there is some scientific truth, and there have been some amazing scientific discoveries in the field of biology and origins through evolution scientists. But what my book does do, my book does prove that evolution is not and should not, and really scientifically, credibility-wise, it cannot be declared to be settled scientific fact. And that's the thing that irritates me and so many people who know real science and people who know the Bible, is that it is just, in today's culture and today's world stand, evolution is just presented as facts. You turn on the History Channel, and one of the things you'll hear is millions of years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth, or you turn on the Learning Channel, billions of years ago when the Big Bang is, and it just is just spoken of as though it's just fact. You pick up public school children, you pick up their textbooks, and you begin reading them. And the fossil evidence proves that evolution is settled fact. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The fossil evidence does not prove any such thing, yet these statements are used. So I spend several chapters presenting real, settled, demonstrable science by scientific method, and I use heavy, solid logic and, again, contextually interpreted Scripture to prove that evolution is not settled science. It's interesting theory, it's fascinating speculation, and some truth, some scientific truth has come out of our study of evolution, but evolution in and of itself does not have the final word on how man arrived here. It is not settled fact, and that's what my book does.
Well, give us some examples of how you know that evolution is not a settled fact.
Well, my book has a myriad of examples in it, but I can just give you a couple. And again, in the book, I go into much greater detail. So for skeptics who are listening and they hear my little brief explanation here and they say, oh, well, I can dispute that. Well, read the book, because I think I deal with probably every argument you have. But in my brief explanation, let's just go to this understanding of origins. I've already kind of alluded to that, billions of years ago, Well, let's just go to that. The whole idea of what used to be called the theory of evolution is based upon, well, how it all began. Now here's one of the disingenuous arguments of modern evolutionists. They say, oh, well, we don't deal with origins, we just deal with the fact of speciation. That is, that one species can take on characteristics and different characteristics until it becomes another species. Now, there is scientific evidence for that. I mean, for example, the dog species. We've got the dog kind. We've got hundreds of species of dogs. Well, that's been brought about through genetic breeding, and some changes come about from environmental inclusion, etc. However, when we speak of evolution at that level, we're just talking about what genetics tells us. The Bible tells us about speciation. That's no problem. But when you take that theory of speciation, or that fact of speciation, and you begin to work it backwards, and you say that, okay, this explains how everything got here. This fact of speciation explains everything. Well, no, it doesn't, because dogs are always dogs. I don't care how many species you have. Cats are always cats. Horses are always horses. I don't care how many species you have, but the horse kind never becomes any other thing. However, origins theory, which uses the vehicle of evolution, says that billions of years ago in a magical soup with magical energy input over magical time, the magical chemicals magically arranged themselves randomly, accidentally, if you will, with no intelligence input whatsoever, into a single-cell living organism that over millions of more years decided that it needed to replicate itself, and it became a multi-cell. And then over millions of more years, one of the simplest forms of multi-cells was a sponge-like creature. And That then, over millions of years, took on other characteristics and became an ancient worm-like creature, which then became an ancient fish-like creature, which then became an ancient amphibian-like creature, which then crawled out on land millions of years later and became a reptile, which branched off into 3 different kinds of reptiles. One of them turned into a mammal and then to an early primate, and a rat-like creature, and then a monkey-like creature, and then the common ancestor of a chimp and a man, and boom, here we are. Well, now, that's the theory of origins. If that was printed in a Bible, we'd all be burned at the stake tomorrow, Stan. But it's printed in science books, and it is declared as settled science. First of all, it begins with the premise of spontaneous generation, that life can come from non-life randomly. Well, spontaneous generation was disproved a couple of hundred years ago. Louis Pasteur and people working even before him proved that spontaneous generation is a scientific impossibility. So what do modern-day evolutionists do? They spiff up the word and they call it chemosynthesis or abiogenesis. Just fancy words that basically say, at their foundational level, that life comes from non-life. Well, again, my book goes to great lengths, as I have just done here, to explain and to prove that that's not science. That's fairy tale stuff. That's pseudoscience. That's already been disproven by real science. It cannot happen. Yet, Stan, it is the foundation of the entire theory of origins, and the vehicle for making all of it work is, ta-da, evolution. So here's just one example that's in my book. And again, my book goes into much more detail, but our kids are taught this stuff as though it is fact. And it is not. No scientist has ever been able to create life out of non-life. Never in the entirety of human history have we observed life coming from non-life. Never has happened, never will happen, never can happen. Yet it is declared every day in our culture that it is settled science that that's exactly how it happened.
Okay, what about Tilt Down Man and all the proof of all the bones that are out there? Do you address that?
There are so many books that address that. My book really doesn't address that. You're talking about the various hoaxes or anomalies in the fossil record and the missing link. And by the way, it's called missing for a reason, because it's missing. And there are no fossil links and fossil records that prove conclusively that one kind of animal became another kind of animal. They just don't exist. And no, my book doesn't deal with that directly. I think I mentioned it a few times, but it's not meant, again, to be a sweeping book disproving evolution, but it's meant to be what I do when I deal with evolution is I prove to the reader that they don't have to worry about standing up to real settled science, because evolution is not real science and is not settled science.
Let's say a person that teaches evolution in the schools is listening to you, and let me pose this question on top of it. Why can't we get evolution removed from the schools and the Bible taught in the schools if everything you say is accurate?
Yeah, well, the answer to that is quite simple, but yet complex. It's because of political correctness. It's because of money and grants and power and prestige. I mean, Stan, you and I know that this battle really is not against flesh and blood, but it's against powers of wickedness and darkness, right? We know that from the spiritual standpoint, but how do we see it played out in the flesh? Oh, it's like this. So if you're a scientist who stumbles across the fact in your scientific research that, you know what, no matter how hard I try, I cannot make non-living chemicals become a living thing. I just can't do it. So you know scientifically that the whole foundation for evolution is false. You know that as a scientist. All right, but you've just spent 16 years of your life in school and college and graduate school and doctoral dissertations and residencies and now you've got a job and you're teaching or you're in a research lab and now you're dependent upon federal grants. And so what do? Do you get out there and tell everybody, look, evolution is junk? No, of course you don't. Because if you do, you've destroyed everything. You destroy your livelihood, you destroy your ability to write, your ability to get published. So it's just been this sweeping wave of over 4 or 5 generations, Stan, of evil and darkness and lies that have been taught generation after generation after generation. And now governments are involved, and grants are involved, and money's involved, universities. I mean, think about it, Stan.
Okay, so at the end of the day, they're basically saying this is what we have chosen, and the people go along with it.
Absolutely, and the book of Romans prophesied that. Paul prophesied that in the first chapter of Romans. He said, in professing to be wise, they would become fools. And that he said that they would exchange the glory of God with what's the glory of God? His ability to create.
We'll be right back after this message. I just made the revised Revelation Verse by Verse 2.0. The new 2.0 version has 612 PowerPoint slides, 212 pictures, and 10 charts. The topics are: what is the message of the 7 churches? Who are the 4 horsemen? Is Revelation layered or sequential? What is a probable time for the tribulation to begin? Who are the beasts from the sea, the earth, and the pit? What does is fallen mean? What does it look like the day Jesus returns? Is the day of the Lord a year, a month, or a 24-hour day? Who is the woman who rides the beast? Who is the false prophet? Does the New Jerusalem come down at the end of 6,000 years or 7,000 years? When do we get our mansions? Are there 1 or 2 judgments on America? When is the door shut to the 5 virgins? Does everyone who survives Armageddon automatically get a glorified body? 2/3 of mankind is killed in the tribulation. What happens to the other 1/3? 8 hours, 4 DVDs, valued at $120. The upgrade gift amount is $30. The full version, $75. Call 785-266-1112. Ask for 2.0. That's Revelation Verse by Verse, second version, 2.0. Call 785-266-1112 or go to prophecyclub.com. Revelation Verse by Verse 2.0. The Prophecy Club is having a summer blowout. You get 6 DVDs of your choice valued at $180 for a gift of $100, but it expires August 31st. Not available on the internet. You gotta call 785-266-1112 to place your order. That's 6 Prophecy Club DVDs for a gift of $100. Call 785-266-1112. Get yourself informed. Don't let the tricks of the devil deceive you. Get 6 DVDs for a gift of $100. Call 785-266-1112. And now, back to the program.
And that he said that they would exchange the glory of God with what's the glory of God? His ability to create. They would exchange it for images made to look like birds and animals and reptiles and mortal man. But they would exchange the glory of God for those images, and they would worship and serve, what does Romans 1 say? The created things rather than the Creator. And professing to be wise, they became fools. And that's where we are. Our world and the culture even of America has chosen to deny the creative glory of God, and they've chosen to embrace this pseudoscientific, non-provable, illogical, magical incantation of it all happened in a magical mud pit billions of years ago. Now, we've never been able to recreate it. We've never seen it happen before. We can't even make it happen, but we're going to declare that that is truth. And you say, well, if it's so unsettled and you've proven it, why don't we just throw all that out and teach creation in schools? Oh, well, I wished we could, but now the powers that wrap around it are deep and tentacled. Think about it, Stan. Let's say that you spend all of your life, you get a PhD in biology or paleontology, or the study of human origins, anthropology, and you're just immersed in all of this. The last thing you want is to admit or to discover that everything you believe and everything you've been taught is a lie. The last thing you're going to admit or that you want to discover is that all of your hard work and your PhD means nothing, and that all the articles you've written and all the books you've had published mean nothing. The last thing you want is for your federal grant money to be cut off, for you to be fired from the university or the research lab at which you work. So you see how deep the tentacles go? This is why nothing is being done in the field of public education, for example. It's not because the evidence isn't there. The evidence is overwhelming. My book catalogs it again. It's because we're living in deep, spiritually dark times. And so what my book does, it equips the believer to deal with, at a personal level, to deal with these attacks as they come to the Christian.
You know, so many times people say, oh, well, if America will just repent, then this judgment, these Russian bombs are going to come to America. And I say, yeah, well, the problem is in that phrase is if. And the foundations in America are destroyed. When we have taken prayer and the teaching of the Bible out of our schools, how can our nation prosper? Your book is at least taking a step in the right direction to work outside of the schools, but somehow we need to try to make an effort to change the schools. Do you have any idea, any suggestions, any hope of how to do that?
Yeah, well, several things. I don't want to sound like I'm giving a cheap plug for my book, but one of the latest tools we have now is my book. And let me just give you an example. I put this in the hands of a school superintendent the other day in the Gulf Coast here. I knew the guy. I ran into him at a big meeting somewhere, and I just struck up a conversation with him. Said, look, I've just written a #1 bestseller. I said, I know you claim to be a Christian, and I said, can I put this in your hands? He said, yeah. Well, I didn't know if he'd ever read it. I got an email from him about 3 weeks later, and he said, Carl, he said, this book is unbelievable. He said, it has rocked my world. He said, I've taken it to my pastor. I've taken it to my Sunday school class. I've taken it to our men's Bible study. And he says, I'm putting it into the hands of teachers that I know that are Christians. Now, there's a school superintendent. I mean, little by little, heart by heart, school district by school district, my book can be used, Stan. I mean, this is just one tool. There are other things we can do as well. But not only to get it into the hands of people who can make a difference, school board members, for example, county commissioners, school administrators, teachers, biology teachers, etc. But not only that, but just as Christians who are equipped to speak these things at an intelligent level, then go into the public school systems from elementary all the way through college. I mean, this book is written for college students as well. And the debate has to happen heart to heart, person to person. That and prayer, asking God to intervene miraculous ways, is the only way we're going to turn this bus around, because we decided decades ago, Stan, generations ago, that we were going to turn from God and declare that we came from monkeys.
Yeah, amen. You know, in my opinion, the foundation has got to be their knowledge of the Bible, and so many people have stopped reading the Bible. Does your book create a hunger in a person to read the Bible so that they can answer these questions?
Oh, I think it does. I think it does, because that's a great question, Stan. I think it does. Where I quote the Bible quite profusely in my work, and I would say 90 to 95% of the times I quote it, I actually write out the scripture verse in my book. Now, a few times I'll just have it in parentheses so somebody can go look it up on their own. But most of the scripture to which I refer is written out in the book, so you don't even have to pick the Bible up and go do it. You just read it right there in the book. And so that's a very helpful part of the way the book is written. But it does. I think what I do, I take these scientific arguments. Listen, I deal with quantum physics and biology and microbiology and paleontology and anthropology and cosmology. And I deal with many of the sciences and a lot of logic, too. And I tie all of that to Scripture, Stan. So I think people who are interested in learning, as they read the book, I think it's going to really fire them up. I use scientific truths to show how it brings the Bible alive. So I think it'll fire people up to get into the Word of God and to see the Word of God in a whole new light.
I like the fact that you do a radio program. Secular people, atheists, call in and you answer their questions live on the air. So these techniques apparently work.
Yes, they do. And, when you're live on the air, and I'm live on the air several times a week, and my flagship show is every Friday for 2 hours, and I hang myself out there, and when you're live, you can't blow smoke in people's ears. I mean, you've got to be ready. Like the Scripture says, you have to always be ready to give the reason for the hope that is within you, accurately handling the Word of God, presenting yourself as a workman. So yeah.
How's it go on a live radio? I mean, when you're answering these questions, how's it go? I mean,
it goes well. The same way that you and I are talking right now. You've asked me some tough questions, and you've heard my answers, and so people will ask, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And, well, my science book says this, and what about the fossils? And what about this? And what about that? And so I just let them ask the question, and then I just answer.
Okay, let's talk about your audience. You've obviously talked about this on your radio program. have the response from your audience and your close friends, your neighbors that are reading the book? Are they saying that they're liking it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. People
and the
are
audience is ordering it?
Oh, yeah. People are raving about it. And the thing they're doing, a lot of people are picking it up just because they know me or know of me. And you know, my face and voice and opinion is known by millions around the world now because of the Internet and YouTube, and 23 million views on our YouTube channel, and now the radio program. So millions of people know me. So people are picking the book up out of curiosity. But what I'm getting a ton of response of people who are saying, you know, I read the book because I wanted to. I read the book because I knew you. But now I've ordered 4 more copies. And I'm giving it to my brother and to my uncle and to my boss and to my coworker and but they're finding it that useful, Stan. They're finding it that powerful, and I'm so honored by that. Very few people are buying it and just reading it and then putting it on the shelf and walking away. I mean, this book, it affects your life, Stan. God has anointed it. It affects your life. It does. It makes you a stronger person, a better person, a more bold person, a more courageous person, and it also invokes within you the desire to share the book with other people.
The Magic Man in the Sky, folks. We've been listening to Carl Gallup's The Magic Man in the Sky, and if you ever find yourself in a conversation where you've run out of words, where you don't know exactly how to answer someone, man, having someone that can guide you, that has answered in live radio situations, and that is not one that's just offending people and getting into some kind of an argument or a fist fight with them, but can actually give you an answer. I think that's very, very powerful. The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith by Carl Gallups. And, of course, you can get it through the Prophecy Club. Call 785-266-1112, and hopefully by the time this broadcast airs, we'll also have it up on the Internet at prophecyclub.com. The Magic Man in the Sky by Carl Gallups. Call 785-266-1112. All right, Carl, we got about 60 seconds left. What would you like to say in exit?
Well, if I only have 60 seconds, I want to say this. All praise and glory to Jesus Christ for giving me this message, for putting the anointing on it. I pray that he uses it to advance his kingdom. 1 John 5:12, very, very clear. He who has the Son has the life. He who has not the Son has not the life. And you might say, well, how do I have the Son? Romans 10:9 says it like this. If you would confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, then you shall be saved. And Romans 10:13 says, for whosoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. So I'd like to invite listeners right now, if you've never surrendered your life to Jesus Christ, you've never followed him in believer's baptism, you've never driven that stake in the ground and said, Lord, here I am. Here today I come to you and I surrender my life to Jesus Christ, then I pray that today would be the day that you would do that. Today would be the day that you would find new life. As the Holy Spirit is drawing you, that today would be the day that you are born again. How do I do that? Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Not Allah, not Muhammad, not Buddha, not Confucius, not yourself, not the government. With your mouth, Jesus is Lord. And then believe in your heart, that means with the soul of your being, that God raised him from the dead. No one else but him. And then you shall be saved. And I pray for your salvation even now. Thank you, Stan.
Carl, thanks for being on. Have to have you back again.
It would be my honor. God bless you.
All right, folks, it's called The Magic Man in the Sky by Carl Gallups, and you can obtain it by calling Prophecy Club 785-266-1112. Magic Man in the Sky, call Prophecy Club 785-266-1112. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers and your gifts of support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. I invite you to order my brand new DVD, Stargates, Wormholes, and the Bottomless Pit. Have 10,000 scientists from 100 countries recreated an Egyptian Stargater wormhole? Was the idea for movies such as Contact, Hellboy, and Stargate SG-1 birthed from their plan to build a modern Stargate? Is their stated goal to recreate the Big Bang, the moment of creation, really a cover story for something more sinister? Will the 17-mile circular Large Hadron Collider, built 574 feet underneath Switzerland and France, open a door to another world? Some scientists fear it could easily open a wormhole or create a black hole and destroy this planet. Is it what fulfills the prophecy that the beast shall ascend out of the bottomless pit? Call 785-266-1112 and order Stargates, Wormholes, and the Bottomless Pit, or go to prophecyclub.com. Would you like to be able to answer any question an unbelieving atheist could ask you? Being able to easily, effectively, and lovingly lead some of the most angry at God or disbelieving agnostics to the sinner's prayer receiving Jesus as Lord. Carl Gallups believes his new book, Magic Man in the Sky, teaches you exactly that. Carl spent 10 years as an international youth evangelist, a conservative radio talk show host with a large national audience, a guest biblical and political commentator for radio and television programs, coast to coast, and a much sought-after Tea Party speaker where he learned to lovingly and effectively answer almost every question to defend our Christian faith. Order your copy now by calling The Prophecy Club, 785-266-1112. Magic Man in the Sky, 785-266-1112, or click prophecyclub.com. I just made the revised Revelation Verse by Verse 2.0. The new 2.0 version has 612 PowerPoint slides, 212 pictures, and 10 charts. The topics are: what is the message of the seven churches? Who are the four horsemen? Is Revelation layered or sequential? What is a probable time for the tribulation to begin? Who are the beasts from the sea, the earth, and the pit? What does is fallen mean? What does it look like the day Jesus returns? Is the day of the Lord a year, a month, or a 24-hour day? Who is the woman who rides the beast? Who is the false prophet? Does the New Jerusalem come down at the end of 6,000 years or 7,000 years? When do we get our mansions? Are there one or two judgments on America? When is the door shut to the 5 virgins? Does everyone who survives Armageddon automatically get a glorified body? 2/3 of mankind is killed in the tribulation. What happens to the other 1/3? 8 hours, 4 DVDs, valued at $120. The upgrade gift amount is $30. The full version, $75. Call 785-266-1112. Ask for 2.0. That's Revelation Verse by Verse, second version, 2.0. Call 785-266-1112 or go to prophecyclub.com. Revelation Verse by Verse 2.0. The Prophecy Club is having its summer blowout. You can get 6 DVDs of your choice, normally valued at $180 for a gift of only $100. And it goes for a good cause, that is, to keep the warning message and the gospel going out. Not available on the internet. You gotta call 785-266-1112 to place your order. That's 785-266-1112. 6 Prophecy Club DVDs for a gift of just $100.
How's it going, guys? White Rabbit here. I'd like to talk to you all today about a topic that seems to be frequently overlooked by fellow truthers. And this topic that I'm about to bring up is so crucial to the New World Order's plans that its lies can be found on the pages in textbooks all across America. Its reach of deceit penetrates our society and is continually referenced in movies, TV shows, and literature. It has been the basis of religious beliefs falling to the wayside and has been the foundation on which other belief systems have arose. It is the deepest, darkest secret that the occult and the New World Order have at their disposal, and it is so heavily guarded and protected that even some of the most brilliant minds in history have fallen for its deception. It is a lie that should be so obvious to those who seek the truth that it baffles me that so many truthers allow cognitive dissonance to keep them from even researching the topic. Once I reveal the topic that I will be covering in this video, you will almost certainly feel a gut reaction, and that gut reaction will be either positive or extremely negative. And I want you to realize that when you feel that gut reaction, you can be assured that we are dealing with a very serious and important topic. I want you to realize that the only reason so many people fall for this lie is because it has been drilled into your mind throughout your entire life and has been reinforced through repetition, time and time again. Naysayers of this topic have been demonized and mocked, and you will soon realize why. So listen carefully to what I am about to say, and hear me out. Resist the urge to turn off this video and ignore what I am about to say. For most of you, this video will go directly against what you have been led to believe your entire life. Do not let cognitive dissonance keep you from discovering the truth. Folks, the greatest lie ever told to all of us is that evolution is scientific fact. It is not. It is a belief. It is a fundamental religious belief. And in this video, I am going to prove that to you beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, it is important to realize that the main opposition against evolution comes from people of faith, typically people who interpret the Bible literally. The problem with this is that our society has conditioned us to believe that anyone who literally interprets the Bible is a nut and is not to be taken seriously. Ultimately, this results in an added, additional mental roadblock for one to get past in order to even hear the opposing arguments. For this reason, I will not be referencing the Bible at all throughout this video. I am not trying to prove the antithesis of the theory of evolution. I'm not even necessarily trying to change your mind if you believe in evolution. I don't think you should, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video, like I said, is just to prove that it's not fact, with the hopes that you will then go forth and research the topic in more depth with a more open mind. Now, before we get into anything, we first need to understand why they would want people to believe that evolution is scientific fact if it wasn't. I mean, what's the point, really? What benefit would they have of convincing you that something is fact if it wasn't? The answer is quite simple. There is a group of crazy, satanic elitists who have set out with the goal of ruling the world. I think most of us at this point realize this. And in their goal to rule the world, they have several objectives that they must accomplish, one of which is a one-world government. Pretty self-explanatory. But another key ingredient to their plan is to create a one-world religion. Ah, now we're getting somewhere. Now, in order to create a one-world religion, there are 3 ways that one could go about it. The first way is by force. And if you look back at history, you can see the Catholic Church itself taking part in such atrocities. In fact, all throughout history, religious conflict has been a key driving force in violent, bloody war. Now, here's the problem. Forcing someone to believe something is not very efficient. And if history is any indication, it's not very effective. Not only does it take a lot of energy and a lot of people, but it's also not guaranteed. You also have to take into account the people who simply will refuse to accept a religion that they do not believe in. This is when conflict arises. And even the people who do concede and who do claim to accept the religion that you are forcing them to believe in their heart, will never truly believe. So this option is not very practical or effective. The second option is societal influences. Now, we all know that the elite use the media and Hollywood and all these different mechanisms to change the perspectives and beliefs of the population. However, standing alone, attempting to change someone's religious beliefs simply through societal influences is a long shot at best. So then we come to the third option, and that is convincing people that their religion is wrong, while simultaneously pushing your religion as not being characteristic of a religion at all. but instead a certainty, a fact. The reason this would be the most effective way to approach this is by eliminating any debate whatsoever. Think about it. If your religion contradicts fact, it will only be a matter of time until people stop believing. Now, it is important to understand that evolution did not stem from Darwin. Evolution actually stems from naturalism, or a form thereof. Now, the debate between naturalism being a religion or a philosophy is still widely debated, but I just wanted to bring this up for you to realize that it wasn't so much science that created evolution and the theory thereof, but the worldview of a few, which likely led to its acceptance and popularity. So let's break evolution down so that we can understand why it is in fact a religious belief and not scientific fact. The simplest way to explain this is by defining our terms. Let's look at the word religion. The first definition of religion that you will find states that it is a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. The second definition is a specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons. The third definition is the body of persons adhering to a particular set of beliefs and practices. And the last definition I'll give you is probably the most important. Something one believes in and follows devotedly. A point or matter of ethics or consciousness. So basically, all a religion is a particular worldview that people subscribe to, which helps to explain the origin of the universe and is followed devotedly. So now let's look at the definition of science. The definition of the word science clearly states that it is a systematic knowledge of the physical or material world gained through observation and experimentation. That is crucial to understanding why evolution at its core is a belief and not a science. Because in order to qualify as science, it has to be knowledge that is gained through observation and experimentation. The funny thing about evolution is that even if a scientific experimentation and observation was performed, which proved its possibility, still would not be proof of it having occurred, but only that it theoretically could have occurred. And there's a big distinction between the two. See, in order for evolution on a larger scale to be able to explain the origin of life as it claims to do, it would have had to have been observed. Now, if we look at the definition of evolution, we can see that evolution is clearly defined as the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. Folks, in order for something to become more complex, you need to introduce new information. Now, for the sake of simplicity, just realize that in order for evolution to even be possible, evolutionists claim that this new information is introduced through mutations. Now, common sense suggests that mutations are usually negative things, but evolutionists are optimistic and are counting on that rare case where damage will cause information to materialize out of nowhere, just by getting extremely lucky during scrambling of the genetic code. Evolutionists acknowledge that each tiny bit of new information is extraordinarily rare. Therefore, they say that's why it takes millions and millions and even billions of years to happen on a noticeable scale. Evolutionists depend on mutations to generate new information in their model. That part of the model is a huge problem. The stubborn fact is that no instance of mutation making information has ever been confirmed. Not even in the tiniest increment. Never. Not once. There is not a single field observation or lab finding. The only thing that they've been able to find is a mutation which recombines existing information, or a mutation that results in the loss of information. but they have never found a mutation that resulted in new information being created. Never, ever, not once, not one time has that ever been proven to even be possible. Folks, adding brand new information to the genome essentially is evolution. So if there is no evidence that it has ever happened, there is no evidence for evolution at all. Furthermore, if there is no evidence at all that it is even possible, and no one has ever observed it happening, there is no way to calculate an average time frame for it to occur. You can't develop a mathematical equation to express the time needed for this beneficial mutation that would result in the creation of new information to occur. Meaning, there's no way to know how long it would take, even if it was theoretically possible. So this whole idea of it taking millions or billions of years is literally pulled out of thin air. Now at this point, many of you are probably asking yourselves, what about the fossil record? To you I say, what fossil record? There is no such thing as a fossil record. All there is a bunch of bones and fossils in the dirt. In reality, all of these bones and fossils actually help to disprove evolution. And substantially, I might add. Darwin predicted the fossil record would present a smooth and gradual transition from one kind of organism to another, but instead we find sudden appearances of fully developed organisms. Not only are they not finding these quote-unquote missing links, they're actually finding new chains altogether. Even more damaging to the evolution theory than that, though, is a little thing called carbon-14. Now, radioactive carbon is like an hourglass that is inside all living things. But once an organism dies, the sand in the hourglass begins to run out. This is called radioactive decay. Nothing on Earth can stop it. And we know that carbon-14 has a short half-life. In layman's terms, we know that it is impossible for any trace of carbon-14 to last more than 100,000 years after something dies. So since evolutionists think fossils are millions of years old, they predicted that fossils cannot contain any trace of carbon-14. However, in recent years, the accelerator mass spectrometer has made it possible to measure trace amounts of carbon-14. Of course, many fossils are completely mineralized with no traces of the original carbon, let alone radioactive carbon. Nevertheless, there is a great deal of unmineralized fossil material being found, including such material as crude oil, coal, diamonds, and even dinosaur bone marrow. So what do we find when these things are tested? If you haven't already guessed, carbon-14 is present in all of these things, even diamonds. Folks, fossils are much younger than they've been telling us. And now, every AMS lab in the world has the proof. Testing labs all over the world are finding carbon-14 throughout the fossil record, from top to bottom, even after carefully filtering out potential contamination. This is conclusive proof that everything on Earth is less than 100,000 years old. So this brings us to our next topic. What about all the different dating methods that they have used to conclude that these fossils are millions of years old? Well, the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that these dating methods that they speak of, like carbon dating, potassium-argon dating, and so on and so forth, are not actually used to age fossils. The so-called geologic column is what is used to date fossils. The funny thing is, fossils are used to date the geological column, which is obviously circular reasoning and doesn't make any sense, but nonetheless, evolutionists do sometimes refer to these other dating methods, regardless of whether or not you're talking about carbon dating, uranium, thorium, lead dating, rubidium, strontium dating, potassium, argon dating. No matter which dating method you're talking about, they all make wild assumptions on the side of evolution. Let me give you a comparison. All of these dating methods are equivalent to this. Say I had a burning candle that was 8 inches tall. and was burning at a rate of 1 inch per hour. If I were to then ask you, when was the candle lit, you would have to make some assumptions. That is essentially exactly how all of these different dating methods work. The scientists that use these dating methods make wild assumptions that cater to the evolution theory. This is important to realize because when they date a fossil using the numbers predicted using the evolution theory, if they were to calculate a number less than what they would expect to corroborate the widely accepted theory of evolution, they throw it out. Folks, the ultimate result in all of this is basically that all these different dating methods are completely and utterly useless. They are equivalent to making up a number off the top of your head. Now, you can research this topic more, and I encourage you to do so. And you will find people who have taken fossils in to be dated by experts, only to get back wildly different numbers. It is completely and utterly unreliable, and is quite frankly an absolute and utter joke. Now, while we're still on the topic of fossils, let's talk specifically about dinosaur bones. Now, evolutionists claim that dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Now, as I've already explained to you, this idea defies modern science. But nonetheless, they continue pushing this part of their theory. Now, imagine the surprise that the scientific community had when dinosaur bones began to surface which still had soft tissue present in them. Folks, there is no way that soft tissue could survive 65 million years. It is absolute and utter nonsense. Furthermore, they will try and tell you that dinosaurs went extinct long before man. Well, that concept in and of itself is completely flawed if you know anything about history. You can look up ancient cultures from all over the world that all depict and write about dinosaurs living side by side with man. These reports are everywhere. Most notably to some are the Inca stones. But let me take it one step further. There are still reports to this day of people seeing dinosaurs. I'm sure you have all heard of a little thing called the Loch Ness Monster. Now, folks, the Loch Ness Monster is not the only one. In fact, there are reports of similar creatures from thousands and thousands and thousands of different people witnessing these creatures in various different lakes all over the world. Now, it is believed by some that these creatures could be a plesiosaurus or something of the like, i.e., a dinosaur. And there are similar reports of people seeing different kinds of dinosaurs all over the world as well. There are even reports of pterodactyls supposedly digging up the graves of people in India from recent years. Now, it's important for me to note that I do not know if these reports are true or not. But when you get eyewitness accounts from thousands upon thousands of people, and you frame it in the light that dinosaurs have been around all along, and have been going extinct gradually over the years, like many other animals have, it really makes you stop and scratch your head. Not only that, but it starts to make a whole lot more sense why scientists would be uncovering dinosaur bones that still have bone marrow in them. Now, the last thing that I want to bring up while we are still on the topic of fossils is that fossilization does not necessarily take millions of years, despite what you may have been told. In fact, in the laboratory, under perfect conditions, fossilization can occur in as little as a week. So no, it does not necessarily take millions of years for things to fossilize. So let's now move to the subtopic of human evolution. I'm sure that you have all heard at one point or another during your life that man evolved from ape. And I'm sure that you have been told about all of the different supposed transitional stages of human beings supposedly found linking Homo sapiens to apes or an ape-like creature. And all I have to say about this, folks, is that you really need to do your research. The vast majority of these are admitted and proven frauds, yet are still touted as being true. Let me give you just a few examples. Nebraska Man was a name applied to Hesperopithecus Harold Cookie, a putative species of ape. Hesperopithecus meant ape of the Western world, and it was heralded as the first higher primate of North America. Now, folks, this discovery of Nebraska Man was entirely based on a tooth, one single tooth. And from that tooth, they somehow magically constructed an entire species that conveniently for evolutionists served as one of many necessary missing links needed to serve as evidence for man evolving from ape. Another example is Piltdown Man. Now, Piltdown Man was originally classified as an Eoanthropus dawsoni. Now, the problem with this particular one is that it was discovered to be a forgery in 1953 and consisted of the lower jawbone of an orangutan deliberately combined with the cranium of a fully developed modern human. Folks, the thing you have to ask yourself is why are there so many frauds surrounding the evolution theory? Statistically speaking, these genetic mutations that result in the creation of new information are extraordinarily rare, meaning that in order for one species to transcend to the next level, as the theory of evolution dictates, they would have to cycle through hundreds, probably more like thousands upon thousands of generations in order for this genetic fluke to occur. My point is this. Either these man-like apes should have been around for thousands and thousands of years, or at the given point in time when they did exist, there would have had to have been a huge population of them. In either case, the quote-unquote fossil record should be riddled with these bones. These archaeologists shouldn't be resorting to creating hoaxes in order to gain notoriety and fame for finding the missing link. They should literally be tripping over these things. Another one would be Lucy. Lucy was discovered by a man named Donald Johanson and was found in 1974 in the Awash Valley in Ethiopia. It was classified as an Australopithecus afarensis and only consisted of several hundred pieces of bone, representing only about 40% of the skeleton of this supposed missing link. Now, what is highly suspect about this so-called discovery is that Donald Johanson went to Ethiopia with a grant to find the missing link. Now, just 2 weeks before his grant money expired and ran out, he discovered Lucy. Highly motivated, I suspect. Now, Lucy was 3 feet tall and was obviously a chimpanzee of some kind. Now, the skull was completely crushed, so they could not tell anything about the skull. But when they depict her in museums and in textbooks, they make her appear half human and half ape. The supposed knee joint of Lucy was found over 1.5 miles away and 200 feet deeper, and the hands and feet bones were missing, yet they somehow decide to put human feet on it whenever it's illustrated. Now, one that most of you have probably heard of is Neanderthal Man. Neanderthals are generally classified by biologists as the species Homo neanderthalensis. The problem is it has been proven that the Neanderthal cannot possibly be a missing link between man and ape. I highly encourage you to do more research on the Neanderthal man. Unfortunately, there is far too much to get into in this video. But to give you a very short explanation, Neanderthals are actually thought to be superior humans with thicker bones and stronger muscles who actually lived to be very old. They also appear to have a 13% larger brain than modern man. Folks, any way you slice it, Neanderthals are not an intermediate step in the road to create modern man, but can actually be considered one step above modern man. They were smarter, stronger, faster, and bigger than we are today. Now, this brings me to a problem which should be obvious to anyone who supports the theory of evolution and who also considers themselves to be a scientist. And that is that evolution adamantly and vehemently defies entropy, or in other words, the second law of thermodynamics. This fundamental law clearly expresses that over time things degrade, things become more random, that things decline over time. A common sense way of looking at this, and something that should be obvious, is that we see species go extinct. They don't come into existence. We aren't seeing an increase, we're actually seeing a decrease. In fact, while we're at it, let me just quickly rattle off a few other fundamental scientific principles that evolution violates in one way or another. We've already talked about entropy, but it also violates biogenesis, Mendel's law of genetics, spontaneous generation, law of information systems, specified complexity, irreducible complexity, statistical mathematics, natural law, beneficial mutation, genetic complexity, and information theory. Now, folks, I must ask, how on earth can evolution be classified or considered a scientific fact when even at a fundamental level, even if proven possible, does not prove that it actually happened, has never actually even been proven possible scientifically, has been repeatedly discredited through fossil findings and recent research, hangs the majority of its most significant pieces of evidence on proven hoaxes, and defies numerous well-established scientific principles? Folks, at the end of the day, there is absolutely no way to quantify evolution as a fact or a certainty. It is a belief, and a religious one at that. People follow this theory devotedly and base their entire view of the universe and how it works on this theory. And in fact, the saddest and most apparent way that you can see for yourself how devoted the followers of the evolution theory are to this precious belief that they hold in their heart, if you go and look at any video on YouTube that even so much as questions the theory of evolution, and you will find in the comments section a plethora of people attacking the video and the video's creator in a slew of vulgar and grotesque ways, void of any logical basis, solely because their worldview is being crumbled and threatened. It is a belief, it is religious, and if we are not careful, it will be the foundation on which the one world religion is built. Folks, do not believe for 1 second that evolution is somehow fact, and that you must bend your personal religious beliefs around it. Evolution is far from fact, and is actually much closer to fiction. And it's important for me to note here that the pieces of evidence that they conclude are scientifically proven cannot possibly quantify as evolution. And calling them evolution or part of evolution is extremely misleading and deceitful. Adaptation is a much better word than microevolution to explain the subtle changes within a given species of the same kind. Obviously, animals change over time. That's how we're able to breed different types of dogs or faster racehorses for the Kentucky Derby. That's all done through selective breeding. That has nothing to do with evolution. Now, as we talked about in the beginning of this video, evolution implies the creation of new information. The problem is that every single one of these microevolution cases that they point to in an attempt to solidify their theory all are the result of recombining already existent information or losing information. In none of these is new information being created, which is what is essential for evolution to be true. To explain this on a graph, I've already explained that evolutionists believe that all forms of life evolve, meaning that they are adding complexity, they are adding information. This can be depicted by an upward graph. Now, this is all hypothetical. It has never once been proven in a laboratory setting or in the field. What scientists do observe on a regular basis, however, is the recombining of already existent information, meaning no additional complexity being added, which can be represented by a horizontal line. In other words, variations within the same kind of animal, but all resulting from the same genetic information. Nothing added, nothing subtracted. they also occasionally witness mutations that result in the loss of genetic information. This can be represented by a downward slope, or the loss of complexity, the loss of information. Now, sometimes they try and confuse you, and they will point to something that they claim is a beneficial mutation that is actually the result of losing genetic information. But the way that that works is an organism losing a protein that a virus or bacteria attacks. Therefore, if the organism no longer produces and creates that protein, this virus that was attacking them is no longer able to. And they credit that as a beneficial mutation when in reality, it is the loss of genetic information and cannot possibly quantify as evolution. If anything, it's de-evolution. Now, when we look at these graphs, we know that the creation of new information has never once been observed, tested, or proven, even possible. The horizontal line accurately depicts no information being added or lost, while still creating variations within the same kind of animal. Now, the downward slope, as I described, explains the loss of genetic information. Now, the thing with this is, you can't continue losing genetic information and still see beneficial mutations. The vast majority of the time, when you lose genetic information, it's a negative thing. So yes, while scientists can occasionally point to the loss of genetic information being a benefit to a particular animal, not only is that extraordinarily rare, but it actually shows de-evolution. So when we look at this graph and we see what has been proven and what has never been proven, and we look back at these bones of Neanderthal man being uncovered, well, it begins to seem as though we're actually, in a sense, de-evolving. I mean, after all, that is what the science is indicating. Now, my point is that when somebody comes to you and claims that evolution is scientific fact, you can be rest assured that they clearly don't even understand evolution on an elementary level. Evolution has absolutely no proof to back it up, and the evidence that is used to support it is questionable at best. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, guys, the purpose of this video isn't necessarily to convince you one way or the other. The point of this video is to entice you to go out and do more research. This is a very big topic, and it has many different facets. And so it's going to be a time investment for you to go and educate yourself on this issue. To make it a little easier for you guys, I've put together a playlist that I will leave in the description of this video that has hours and hours of good information debunking the evolution theory and also explaining what the creationist viewpoint is. Now, I didn't talk too much in this video about the creation point of view, but folks, I think you owe it to yourself to really investigate that and do some soul searching and ask yourself, do you believe in evolution because it's right or because you've been told to believe in it? So there you go, guys. Hopefully you got a lot out of this. Like I said, this video only scratches the surface, and I highly encourage you to please research evolution more in depth and give the alternative view of creation a chance. Having said that, if this video didn't strike a nerve with you, then it probably wasn't meant for you. This video is meant for anyone still trapped in believing the lie that is evolution being scientific fact. And so I would ask you, please share this video with anyone you know who has been caught up in the lie that is the evolution theory. This topic is far too important and far too frequently overlooked for us to sit by anymore and allow these lies to keep being perpetuated throughout our society. Please share this video, get the message out there, and if you're new to this topic, please do the research. Research everything you can get your hands on, because I know that as long as you keep researching and you remain impartial and unbiased to the truth you are seeking, you will eventually discover the truth. And if you're anything like me, it will knock you off your feet once you do. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Make sure you check out some of my other videos. Thanks, and God bless.
I just want to just talk for a minute about New Atheism and biblical scholarship, and something that concerns me deeply. I'm not just saying it, but I have, like I said, I did 4 years full-time theological study at the Nazarene Theological Seminary in Manchester, which was connected to Manchester University. So it was 4 years full-time, and I got my degree in theology and pastoral studies. And I did my dissertation on preaching and modern teaching methods. So it was a BA Honours degree. And I spent nearly 5, maybe 7 years part-time altogether. I can't remember how long, but it was a number of years at MA level. I did my MA. I did MA studies 2 times. I had to break off my studies. And in that time I listened to many of the best theologians in our country, in the United Kingdom. Sat in on discussion groups with these theologians, went to seminars to these theologians, etc. And so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to theology. And what I find, what I found with the New Atheism is a remarkable, deplorable knowledge of biblical studies in terms of theology, in terms of exegesis, in terms of understanding church history. Just a remarkable ignorance, really. And it's sad because they're presenting themselves on YouTube as people who know what they're talking about, and I'm sorry to say, but these new atheists who've set themselves up, such as Aaron Ra and Thunderfoot and Theoretical Bullshit, I'm just naming names so you get a bit of a context. I don't want to attack them personally in this video, but the people who they're connected with and themselves, when they start to talk about Christianity, they honestly, I'm not just saying it, but they reveal a tremendous lack of understanding. They are not qualified to be engaging in theological reflection and teaching young people on theology. And it's pretty dire that they should try to do that. Now, they're so uncritical in their thinking and so backward in their knowledge of biblical theology. They will pick up people like Bart Ehrman and just quote him verbatim and use him in their videos, but they show no critical awareness of the weaknesses of Bart Ehrman, nor any understanding of how Bart Ehrman fits into the whole sphere of biblical theological, biblical and generally Christian scholarship in the academic world. So that's just one thought, and I just want to share with you about this guy. The name's Adolf Schlatter. I would not recommend you to read the book. It's quite an academic book, really, unless you've got time to read. But Adolf Schlatter is a model of what it is to be a scholar, and a Christian scholar. The guy did what is called the historical grammatical method. He looked at the Bible in its context. He did immense scholarship in order for people to have commentaries and Bible teaching that's based on the Bible. But the reason why I bring Schlatter up is Adolf Schlatter, John Calvin, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones, Moses Stewart, Dr. Bob Utley are all examples of people who use the historical grammatical method. They got the Bible in context. When you're studying the Bible, you get it in context. The problem with Bart Ehrman and the problem with the new atheism is they just don't know how to study the Bible. It's as simple as that. And I would encourage you to follow Adolf Schlatter's method, John Calvin's method, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones' method, and study the Bible in its historical, grammatical context. And if you do that, you'll be saved from going astray, and you'll be able to answer every criticism that the new atheism brings against the Bible. And it's this lack of historical grammatical method in the new atheism that makes it look a joke when it comes to tackling the Bible. Okay. Basically, to put it bluntly, the new atheism lacks the critical biblical scholarship to be able to criticize the Bible. And if you turn to the historical grammatical method, you'll be well armed to deal with anything the new atheists throw against you. Thank you for listening, and God bless you. I'll put a link to Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones' site as an example of as someone who studied the Bible from a historical grammatical method. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.